first committee of this year. It is 10 o'clock. So tēnā koe te rangatira e Tony. So look, I'm going to start. What I will do is firstly, and as you all know, we'll start with the karakia. I'm going to invite Matua Glenn from the Independent Māori Statutory Board, if he could open up our hui with a karakia. Tēnā koe te rangatira.
Kia ora, Alf. Ohi ki te pōtawhi ki te ahu ki tūnu i o te whare o Tangaroa tō rua te mea taia te rangi tupu te rangi horehia he manawa. Te ohi ka arawe, te tautūki ana whawhai eke Tangaroa, tūtuki ki te rangi, haumi e, hui e, tā.
Tai ki.
Koe nei te mihi kia tātou i roto i tēnei peka, o tēnei peka o te wahanga o te kaunihera, e mihi ana kia kōrua e Alf, e Tony. Tēnei te tino mihi kia koe, ko hakahaitanga te haka mihi a te kuini kia kōrua, e whiwhi ana koutou i ngā taonga a te kuini, no reira tēnei te mihi kia koe, e Alf, tō mahi ki ngā rōpu prihi mana, ki ngā whānau, Pasifika, me ngā whānau katoa, ko koe te koro matua o Māngere. E Tony, ke a koe nā kōrero hoki mo te marae a te ngira, e mihi ana ki a koe mo tō aroha me tō manakitanga ki ngā whānau putanoa i a papakura e tāwhiti ana, e tāwhito ana nā kōrero mo, no reira tēnei te mihi kia kōrua, ki ngā whānau katoa o te kaunihera, tēnei te mihi kia tātou, kia ora mai tātou.
Tēnā koe te rangatira, and firstly, just want to acknowledge and say thank you for opening up our hui with the karakia. But also from my perspective, I'm going to invite Matua Kake as well, if there's anything he wishes to say, but just to say thank you so much for acknowledging the honour and the award. Thank you. For that from my perspective, and I just want to say thank you to all those that are online for being part of my journey. I have loved having you as part of that journey. So ngā mihi ki a koe, ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa, and I'm just going to invite Matua Kake if there's anything that he would say. Kia ora nā.
Kia ora tātou, e tautoko ngā kōrero o te ata, te karakia hei timata tātou nei hui e Glenn. Nō reira ngā mihi ati kia koe, he tautoko ngā mihi ngā honore ki tātou nei hia mana Alf. Nō reira ka mihi ati kia koe mō tō honore te pōtai o te MNZM. Nō reira ka mihi ati kia koe. Ngā mihi ati kia koe e Glenn mō tō kōrero awhi kia mātou ki te kōrero ngā mahi o Māua, ko Alf me ahau, me te wainganui, me te tātou katoa. Nō reira ka mihi atu kia koe. So just saying thank you. Thank you for the acknowledgement. Kia ora.
Kia ora Matua. So look, because this is the first meeting of this year, I'm going to invite 4 people just to introduce themselves. These 4 people are now new to the committee. Some of them are not new to council, but one is. So I'm going to invite Jason Howarth. First, Jason, can you just introduce yourself very briefly to let everybody know who you are? And then I'll move on to Milo, and then Justin, and then last but not least is Samantha Sinton. Kia ora, Jason, you first, please.
Thank you, Councillor Alf. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jason Howarth, and I've recently joined the council support team as a senior advisor to support Councillor Alf, Councillor Mulholland and Councillor Bartley. I have background in local government down here in the mighty Kirikiriroa. Great city that it is, and also have a background in residential drug and alcohol addiction rehab, supporting people through their addiction recovery. So a bit of a mould, and further back my background, I've been in the aviation sector. So been here a couple of months, and must say working in the PACE team the last 2 months is a fantastic team. So wonderfully chaired by us. So thank you, everybody.
Kia ora, Jason. Now, I know that Miro has put in the chat bar that he's having difficulties, but Miro, if you can hear, here's the opportunity, my friend.
Yeah. Tēnā koutou katoa ko Milo toku e ngoa. No porana korua ingarani oku tipuna ke te noho au ki tamaki makaoro. Hello, everyone. Very new. This is only my third week. I support Councillor Kathy Casey and Councillor Daniel Newman. And my background is from central government. I was working at the Department of Internal Affairs in Wellington for 4 years, 2 years in the ministerial advice team supporting our ministers, and then subsequently 2 years in the department strategy and performance team. And yeah, 2 quite separate experiences which taught me a lot, and hopefully I'll be utilizing these skills in my new role, and I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Kia ora. I'm going to invite Justin. Yours, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora, everyone. I'll be brief as I know you have a lot to get through. I'm Justin Carey. I'll be taking over Sam Sinton's role in the Mayor's office from the 28th of February. I've been at Council since 2013, mostly in various communications roles, and for the past 2 years, I've been the local board advisor for Rodney. I'd like to take a brief moment to acknowledge Sam for her work in the role. By all accounts, I have absolutely massive shoes to fill. So thank you, Sam, for your work and for the wonderful support that you've given me in the transition as I move into the role. So I'm super excited to start at the end of the month, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Kia ora, Justin. Last but not least, as I said, Samantha.
Tēnā koutou katoa ko Sam Sinton, toko ingoa. Thank you, Justin, for those lovely words. And thank you, Chairman Alf, for the opportunity to reintroduce myself to your committee. I think I'm a bit of a familiar face around PACE, but I'm looking really forward to joining Claudia's directorate on Monday and contributing to the important mahi of the PACE committee in new ways. And as I transition roles, I'd really like to acknowledge Mayor Phil and the mayoral office team for the amazing opportunity that I've had as a part of this office for 3 years now, but looking forward to a new challenge as well. So kia ora, thanks very much, Chair.
And again, congratulations to you all, but it was important that this committee at least get and to hear from you all as well as publicly. So ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. We'll move into our agenda now. So, Maya, if we could go to our roll call, please.
Morena. Thank you, Councillor Chair. Councillor Bartley.
Morena.
Morena. Councillor Casey.
Morena, Maya.
Morena. Deputy Mayor Cashmore. Councillor Collins.
Kia ora.
Councillor Coombe.
Ke konei.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Councillor Cooper.
Aye.
Councillor Dalton.
Morena.
Morena. Councillor Darby.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
Kia ora.
Mayor Goff. Councillor Hills.
Kia ora koutou katoa.
Councillor Henderson.
Kia ora, everybody.
Kia ora. IMSB member Kaki.
Ngā mihi.
Kia ora. Councillor Mulholland.
Kia ora, good morning all.
Kia ora. Councillor Newman.
Good morning, Maya.
Morning. Councillor Sayers.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Simpson.
Morena, morning.
Morena.
Morena.
Councillor Stewart.
Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Walker.
Good morning.
Morning. Councillor Watson.
Talopa Takarauma.
Kia ora. IMSB member Wilcox.
Kei konei.
Councillor Young.
Kia ora, 大家早.
Kia ora. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Maya. So we'll just wait for His Worship the Mayor when he does come on. I'm going to move to declaration of interest. Any? 3-second rule gone. Confirmation of minutes. I will
Sorry
move.
to interrupt, Chair. Could we please do the apologies?
Sorry, my bad. Apologies. I think they're on the screen, Maya.
Correct.
Okay, so look, I'll move the apologies. Second, please.
Collins.
Happy to second.
Okay, I got Collins first, I heard. If there's no further discussion, I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Against? Carried. Declaration of interest. That's already gone, the 3-second rule. Confirmation of minutes. I will move. Councillor Casey to second.
Yep.
Thank you. I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Petitions, there is none. Public input, just to let you know that there is Mr. Mark Roach, UNESCO Auckland City of Music. He will be presenting the public input just prior to item 10. There's also Mr. Max Tweedy, Rainbow Advisory Panel, and his input will be prior to item 13, which is the adoption of Ngā Hapuri Momoho, Thriving Community Strategy 2022-2032. Then we've got the local board input, and there is none. I did get in the sidebar that Councillor Casey, the Deputy Chair of the committee, wishes to say something. Is that now?
Oh, yes. It's so hard to get on your agenda, Alfie. I just want to say how absolutely delighted I was in January when I saw the New Year's Honours list. It's so good, not just for you, not just for the South, it's for all of us. The recognition of your enormous contribution, both as a police officer for 30 years and as the first Pacific member of the New Auckland Council in 2010. And you're a trooper, Alf. You're a trooper for the police, you're a trooper for the council. And I am just so pleased to endorse the accolades that you've heard from our Independent Māori Statutory Board members and from all of us. Just a huge congratulations and a huge thank you. It meant the world to me. I cried when I read the paper and I'm still doing it now. Thank you so much, Alfie. You're well loved and it's well deserved.
Thank you. Kia ora. We'll move on to the agenda, and we've now got into there's no extraordinary items. We'll move to item 8. I will move item 8, and that is the summary. Either a seconder or Councillor Casey.
I second Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. If there's no discussion, I will put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. We'll then move to item 9. That's the review of the Forward Work Programme. Can I firstly acknowledge all the staff around our work programme when we met? Claudia, to you, thank you so much. To all your staff under your directorate when we met around it. You know, I just thank you for our work programme. It's ready to obviously then wait until the governing body gets all our work programmes together. But this is the year for us on delivery. So, Claudia, to you, thank you so much to you and your team and your directorate. To everybody else, thank you. So I will move. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yep.
That's Kathy. Councillor Casey?
Yep.
If there's no further discussion, I will move this. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We'll then move to the first public input. Mark, I want to invite you, and Mark, thank you so much for the mahi that you're doing in regards to UNESCO Auckland City of Music. I know that you were there right from the beginning, even when I chaired the committee previous terms, and then Councillor Casey with her committee as well. But just want to acknowledge you, Mark, and just invite you to say a few words with your public input. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora. Thank you, Alf, and saying morena everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity to address you all. We have just got to, so I have reported to UNESCO in Paris as part of our statutory obligations to that organisation as a 4-year report of what Auckland City of Music has been up to. So I thought it was a timely opportunity to update all the elected members on that situation as well, and just give you an overview of where we're at and where we're going. Maya, would you like to start off with the video? There's just a little taster of the fantastic music that we produce here in Tamaki Makaurau and the environment we are in. I thought it might be useful. There's quite a lot of members and people on this call who probably weren't at the start, and it might be useful to give you a quick overview of where it all began. So Maya, if you go to the next slide. So we applied to be a UNESCO City of Music into the UNESCO Creative Cities Network. That was adopted in 2017. That was supported and endorsed by His Worship the Mayor, the Environment and Community Committee, obviously myself, the Arts and Culture and Community and Social Policy Units, the National Commission for UNESCO, which was vital to putting in an application, and we had over 46 stakeholder organisations, including 3 peak industry bodies of Recorded Music New Zealand, APRA, and the Music Commission. Next slide, please, Maya. The Auckland UNESCO City Music Council Group, the current support. So we are extremely grateful and fortunate to have a wide range of council partners in this journey. As you can see on there, the PACE Committee, the Service Strategy and Partnerships Unit, Arts, Culture and Heritage Unit, Community and Social Policy Unit, Auckland Unlimited support through their Creative Industries Unit, and Auckland Live and Ekiu Panuku Placemaking, all of which have been fantastic relationships over the last 4 years and continue to be so. Maya, next slide. Now, appended to this committee meeting notes is our quadrennial report. So that's a summary of the last 4 years. It's roughly the same as the report put into UNESCO at the end of last year, and it covers off on quite a wide range of the achievements and objectives and projects that we managed to accomplish. There's a small sample of photos in front of you at the moment. on the top left there, obviously the Mayor speaking at the strategy launch in 2018. There's Neil Finn, Brett McKenzie and Tammy Nielsen at Roundhead Studios up in Newton at a 2-day symposium we had featuring international guests. Delaney Davidson playing at Whammy Bar, that was the winning photo for the Music Photography Award, which is a new initiative we established. Irene and Saya Falau performing at the launch of Volume South, which we did in conjunction with Auckland Museum. And then lower down, there's participants from Girls Rock Camp, Kapahaka in Britomart Square, Sir Bob Geldof and Mick Fleetwood, who were guests of ours for a teenage songwriting seminar. And the last one is just a graphic from the Music Cities Awards, which happened last year, where we won Best Global Music Office. There is a lot more content in that Quadrennial Report, so if I could implore you to have a look through at your leisure. It's 60 pages, it's quite a read, but it's well illustrated, so it doesn't feel too onerous to read. I'll pass it back over to you, Alf, if there is any questions you'd like to ask on that.
Mark, look, thank you. And I'm going to put it out to see if there's any partai. So I'll do the 3-second rule as I always done. And we've got Councillor Coombe. Before Councillor Coombe, you ask your partai, I'm going to get Councillor Desley Simpson and Councillor Kathy Casey to move in second the input, and to also thank you, Mark, for not only your attendance, presentation, and Kalinda, if we could add work with the music industry in regards, and just want to acknowledge Mark for that, please, Kalinda. Thank you. So, Councillor Coombe.
Tēnā koe e te hia mana, matua Alf, na mihi nui ki a koutou, e tēnei rā. Kia ora, Mark. Nice to see you here today, virtually. Thank you so much for this report and all of your work on establishing Auckland as a UNESCO City of Music. Before my time, I was a councillor, but it's been fantastic to see the progress, and the report just covers so much. And incredible what you've achieved, even through really trying circumstances of lockdowns. And I do have a partai, as well as just wanting to congratulate you and Mihi for all your work. I just wondered if there was any, there's a lot of depth through the report and lots of things that you're getting support from council, and it's great to see your governance group representing so many of our best minds across council. But I just wondered, is there any specific support that you sort of feel that's missing from council group, or anything that you would like to bring to the forefront for us to be aware of anything that you feel that we could be supporting more strongly, particularly in response to how difficult COVID has made the live music industry and really challenged artists and creatives?
Yeah, it's a really good point, Pippa. The live performance situation is obviously a tricky one to navigate. As you've seen from the central government response, large amounts of cash injection have been put into it to just cover losses. I think in terms of our recovery, though, there is no specific ask from council on that regard. The only thing that we would probably say is just that communication and support is required. It's an ongoing process, so as we just need to be in constant communication and partnership to develop that as it moves on. The sector itself is pretty resilient. We're finding new ways of addressing income loss, but yeah, from a council point of view, it's really just joining hands with us and being supportive.
Thank you, Chair.
Kapai. Thank you, Councillor Coombe. Councillor Casey.
I'll remember to put on my my video this time. Mark, you were really quick about that award that Auckland and you have received from the Global Cities. Could you just tell the councillors a bit more about the competition to win the Global Music Cities Music Office Award, and what goes with that? And congratulations, and I'd like to move that we have a B congratulating you and on that amazing feat. It's great.
Thank you. Yeah, it was something of a surprise. We were up against some pretty heavy competition. So I was also nominated for a public advocacy award as well, which I lost out to the chief executive of the Country Music Association in Nashville, which gives kind of sense of the scale that we're dealing with. So I didn't mind losing out on such competition. We, however, I can't remember, there was 3 finalists in this category. I can't remember what the other one was, but one of them was Melbourne. So I felt quite chuffed to have beaten Melbourne as a best global music office. But yes, it was 10 categories of for different initiatives, and from memory, they had something like 120 odd applicants for this, and they come from every corner of the globe. So to be a finalist was quite a feat. To win it was something else. So yeah. I was hoping that they are sending me a trophy apparently, but it hasn't turned up. I was hoping to
excellent.
hold up and show you the trophy, but I'll send a photo around when that happens.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Casey. So the second B has been put in there by Kalinda, and I've got a mover and seconder if there's no further pātai. 3-second rule's gone. So look, it's been moved in second, so I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Mark, thank you again.
Kia ora.
Look, we'll move on to the actual item. Mark, you can stay on for the item and the rest of the day, which I don't think you'll do, but the option is there. So I'm going to move to item 10, and Jade, Kalinda, if you could put the same mover and seconder for UNESCO that we had for the presentation from Mark. That way it's on the table for Jade to make any comments if she wishes. So Jade, I'll hand that over to you.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. Kia ora koutou, ko Jade Baker toku ingoa, ko Creative Partnerships Lead aho. I'm really pleased to be here this morning and thank you for your time. I'm here really to offer council officer support to the UNESCO City of Music designation and Mark, and just to provide some further information on the ways that council invests in music in our region. I'll take the report as read and acknowledge that Mark has provided an update already. So just to add that council staff are really active participants in this partnership, and we're supporting the development of a refreshed 4-year strategy for this designation. This work sits within the Regional Arts, Culture and Heritage Work Programme, which will next be presented to the PACE Committee in June for approval of the next financial year. Thank you, Mark, for your presentation, and I'm happy to respond to any questions that anyone may have now. Thank you.
Jade, thank you. Look, it is there. We've read the report. I was just thinking to the 3 ladies that are with the committee, and they are the 3 best governance advisors, and that's Maya, Kalinda and Sophie. What I want to do is actually add, if it's okay with Councillor Simpson and Casey, just around the award. So it's noted actually on this particular item in the recommendation as well. If we could do that, please, I think Kalinda, just to note in there the award that UNESCO Music had received. And look, I'm just going to open it up. I've got nothing in the chat bar for any pātai. So I'll move to any whakaaro, any comments.
Yes, please, Chair.
Yep, sorry. Who's sorry?
Sorry, I haven't got it. Sorry, Councillor Simpson. Mr. Chair, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to move this. Music and the arts are an important part for Tamaki Makaurau Auckland's growth and sustainability and place in not just New Zealand, but in Auckland, but for Aotearoa New Zealand and the world. And I think we should be proud of the award, not just from the being a city of music, but for the Music Office Award as well. And I would encourage all councillors to promote the fact that this award has been achieved by us. Nothing in a tongue-in-cheek, nothing like beating the Australians, Mark. So congratulations on that. But seriously, I just think it's a recognition that we should all be proud of, and I hope that within our own channels that we are able to celebrate the success. Thank you and congratulations.
Kia ora. Thank you, Desmond.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. You've now finished the debate with your whakaaro. So it's been moved and seconded. I will put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Mark, thank you again.
Thank you, Al.
Kia ora. We move on to item 11, all the legs. So I will move this one, and I would ask for a seconder.
I'll second, Mr. Chair, but I just have a question.
Yep, no problems at all. So I'll. It's been moved and seconded by Councillor Cooper. I'm now going to ask David to give his report, and then the first partai will be Councillor Cooper. Tēnā koe, David.
Tēnā koe, Chair. Kia ora tātou, ko David McIntosh, Senior Advisor in the Events Unit. Before I get into the detail of the report, I just thought I'd invite David Burt, the manager of the unit, to just give a bit of background to the current environment and sort of what we're facing in terms of with events.
Ka pai.
Yeah.
David Burt.
Yeah, kia ora, councillors and Chairman Alf. Yes, we're in a difficult time in the event sector, not just the event sector, but also the entertainment and hospitality and tourism sector. So we're having to be quite flexible and adjust to the circumstances that COVID and Omicron have delivered us. So that it's quite difficult when we have a regional events grant scheme that is designed to make as much happen in the community and the event sector as possible, and yet, you know, we've had quite a number of cancellations and postponements. So in this case, this was our second round of the $600,000 regional events fund, and we're having to work through some adjustments. David can go through the details, but I do want to assure councillors that we are in communication with all applicants and indeed with the event sector. We're trying to, I don't like necessarily using the word pivot, but we are looking at moving things online or postponing where we can, and trying to still allow and encourage as many events to occur as we can. But it is a difficult situation, and it's one that, you know, we're asking you to bear with us as we work through some of those issues. But I'll hand back to David, who's put all the work into this paper, to just take you through the key points, and then I'll be online and join David with any questions you have. Thank you. Dora.
Thank you, David.
Right, so for this round we received 8 applications. That's a relatively small number, but we had sort of aimed to try and get in the first round more of the applications coming through then for the year. we did overall achieve a sort of a good number, 50 applications, which corresponds to the 2019-2020 period of 46 before we struck the COVID issues. These are all applications we think sort of align sort of with our priorities, and a number of them are ones we've funded before. We have proposed some increases in amounts for these based on largely the additional costs that are being incurred to hold events in this environment, and the also in some cases more limited funding available for events. Things some sources have dried up a bit. One of the key issues we've got though is the with a number of cancellations of events that we've funded, particularly those in round one, we will have money that we don't disperse ultimately, even though grants have been allocated. And as we indicated in the report, there was grants of around, I think it was 242,000 so far from round one, which we don't think will the events will proceed. Not all of that will sort of be returned to us or be retained by us as unpaid grants, because some events actually, do have a level of expenditure that they commit to up front and have to pay, and we sort of work through them on that. And I guess where appropriate, we will get refunds on the grants paid. So we're not sure exactly where we'll end up there. But what that's meant is that we've asked in this report for that delegation to the Justin, the department manager, to look at opportunities for events that may occur in later this year, whether there's opportunities for us to provide support for those if they need them, and all the time ensuring that they're events that line up with our priorities. Not sure how much of demand there'll be for that, but we're sort of hopeful that we might still get some activity later in the year. So I think that's probably about the key comments I've got. So just happy to take any questions.
Okay, before I move in, David, is there anything else, David Burt, if there's anything else you wish to say before I open up for questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I just, further to what David was saying, there are some important events and possibilities coming later in the year, and if the committee agrees, we would be looking to try to further develop Matariki, which I think is a really important event this year. It's going to be a national holiday, and it will be, increased recognition in the community. That's obviously June, July, and we would be looking to our partners and in terms of perhaps some input from the Independent Māori Statutory Board and others to how we can further enhance Matariki as a large-scale regional event. That's perhaps one area. So, there are some opportunities. There's also the opportunity to move some events online, and we are in discussions with a number of parties about that at the moment.
Kia ora, David. Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. It is around cancellations and return of money. So what sort of process do you use? I mean, it's a really difficult thing, isn't it? Because a lot of these events, they've got to pay up front to get things secured, pay deposits, and then often when it's cancelled, they don't get their deposit back, so they can't give us the money back, but the vendor's been able to get the money. How is there a process that you work through with people to kind of see if they can make sure they don't spend that money unless they're really clear it's going ahead? I mean, like a just-in-time type of paying ahead? Because I guess, you know, over this last 2 years, we've probably granted money, but the community's got nothing for it other than basically saving whoever's putting it on, which is fair enough. But what sort of process, because it is a tricky situation.
I suppose there really isn't any process that we're applying up front on that in terms of discussions with organisers. We do sort of aim to sort of delay our payment of funding or not pay it too far in advance to just that gives us a little bit of I guess safety there on that issue. But we know from our own experience and the challenges with suppliers of actually you know, wanting deposits, and they are it's becoming increasingly difficult to engage with suppliers without paying deposits, and because they're desperate for money, and yeah, so it's it is a tricky one. We're sort of really relying on them sort of you know, being I guess cautious about their spend of money anyway. We're generally, you know, only a part funder, so they sort of they often don't have you know, their availability of funding's restricted, so a lot of the time they are quite careful about their spending.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, but David Bird again. I just to assure councillors, we take the allocation of ratepayer money very seriously, and it's not. We have, I think, quite robust procurement policies in council, and we work those through. So, you know, when you get a situation with an event, yes, there are quite a lot of upfront costs, and we will pay for legitimate costs. And probably the best example is to think of something. We're in discussions at the moment with the organisers of the Santa Parade, and they also did the Buskers Festival, both of which were cancelled. So where there's legitimate expenses, say traffic management, where they have had to employ a consultant to come up with the traffic management plan, do the designs and all the rest of it, and make all the applications for permits with Auckland Transport. Yes, we will recognise that and pay for that. But because the event was cancelled, they haven't deployed the trucks and the cones, so we won't pay for that. So that's sort of the example that, in the way we apply it.
Thank you. And just another further question, if you'll indulge me, Mr. Chair. In terms of Matariki events, so being the first official Matariki acknowledged nationally, would there be some, like a small, you know, quick fire fund for maybe local events? I know at least 2 in Te Atatu Peninsula they've talked to me about. They're wanting to do their inaugural Matariki event. Is that something that could happen or go through local boards? Do you, if you're thinking about that?
Yes, we are, and that's if there's a view from the committee that we should be doing that, pivoting towards Matariki, which I think we would be recommending to you, then there's a number of community groups that we've supported in the past. There's quite a lot of events like there's the Marae to Marae and iwi games, and there has been various other activities and concerts and activity. It's to get that balance, and I think the best approach is to get the community involved, and we can go out and push that, and we would be doing that in conjunction with our colleagues in arts, culture and heritage, part of Connected Communities, because Matariki is within that arts portfolio as well. So, yeah, there's some good possibilities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Before I go to Councillor Henderson and then Matuakake, with some of the events that are listed on our agenda, and in particular David McIntosh, the ASB Polyfest, because obviously with the red light that we're in, system we're in now, I'm unsure whether in fact it could go ahead. Obviously a decision will be made with the Principals Association. Now, if it doesn't go ahead and there's other means that they celebrate, or they postpone it to another day, or they go online, what is there anything that we can do to assist our rangatahi in particular, to at least be part of that online, if in fact the association, Principals Association, move to online? Gilda.
I guess this is something that we do with all of the events at the moment. Look at sort of the opportunity, if they can't deliver it in a traditional manner, whether an alternative form achieves the outcomes to a large extent and sort of maintain the funding for them and to deliver in a different way. I think the Polyfest is a good example of one where an alternative form which doesn't have a direct audience but allows the rangatahi to continue with their performances, say online, would be one that we would consider does strongly align with the original application outcomes. While it doesn't get everyone together at the same site, it still enables them to deliver their performances and for them to be presented to whānau and the wider community. So we would generally look favourably at these types of situations. Obviously, the budget would be reviewed, and the amount that we might pay out in the grant could be different because the cost structure is different. We would generally review that with the organisers before confirming a final amount. So the amounts that you approve, we take those as always being subject to sort of final confirmation that things are going to go ahead as planned, and we retain the right as sort of start with the organisers to, I guess, amend or reduce the amounts if there's sort of if they don't need the full amount that has been approved.
Okay, and the reason I mention is the Pacifica Music Awards, for example, that they went online. So look, I'll go to Councillor Henderson.
Cool, thank you, Chair. My questions always tend to have the same kind of theme of how does something become regional, so apologies about that. But I'm just picking up on point 19 in the report, the weighting of how these things are applied to then give us the outcome that we have today. Which weighting kind of gives us a sense of how regional something is? How does it cross several local board boundaries, for example? Where does that come in the criteria?
It's sort of, I suppose it's probably not primarily in that criteria there. It's something that sort of really comes in terms of whether they qualify in the first place. The criteria is saying how strongly they align with our priorities, and so when we look at events, we're looking at it from I guess the scale of the event, how big it is, and also the reach in terms of whether it's drawing an audience from across the region, and how that, and often that means, is it a relatively unique event, and also how many similar events there are. And so I guess an example would be, clearly there are, say, Christmas festivals. There are a number of Christmas festivals and events that occur throughout the region, and so primarily they would be locally board funded. But there is the big Santa Parade, which is at a totally different scale, and that's when we sort of bring in some regional support. we have the cultural festivals. Often there are sort of major cultural festivals that occur in particular parts of the region, but draw their audience from across the region. So they're prime candidates for our funding.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thanks.
Kia ora. Matua kake.
Kia ora tātou. Hey, look, I'm just not quite sure I'm in agreement with the theme or the I guess attitude that I'm hearing here in terms of I take it all applications these days will have a pandemic planning component to it, whether it be in that flexibility of whether the country's in orange or red, and therefore that should influence whether the event goes ahead or not. My question is also in that context around, sometimes they employ people to write up the applications, do the events or do a lot of planning, and then the rug's pulled from under their feet due to COVID, due to government decisions out of their control. So I really wanted to understand more what the fixed cost opportunity to be waived is here in this situation, as opposed to let's hold our money back until we get a guarantee that it's going to happen kind of attitude, where they've already incurred some fixed cost along the way. I think the stance might be a bit harsh, but if I'm a minority in this opinion, I'm happy to hear that.
I might have expressed that a bit harshly. It's we're looking to support the events, and be reasonable about that. And if they've incurred costs, then and we haven't paid out the grant, we would still look to pay out, towards those costs. We're not sort of trying to minimise, our our payments at all. We delay the payments. We want to avoid the risk of something going astray, and if we pay out too far in advance, some organisations might not be as great as others in terms of managing their funding, and so there's some residual risk there for us always. And by just delaying it closer to the event time helps reduce that.
Yeah, look, I know supplementary question through the chair. Look, I'm pleased to hear that, and you guys have been in this game long enough to know that and to apply that discretion when it happens. And so, whilst we might approve the funding, I'm really happy to hear that, I guess is what I'm saying, and that you be authorised to make that decision. So if it means that some of the funding is waived and committed to because of committed fixed costs within Keitapai, I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you.
Kapai. Kia ora na matua. Matua Wilcox.
Kia ora. I'm looking at B2, short notice requests for funding from regional events which have not applied for grants and are facing a budget deficit. So will this be on a first in, first served basis, or how's this going to work? And what kind of numbers are we looking at here? Because I'm looking, because I'm just thinking, basically, what's the criteria? Are they going to have to go through the same criteria? All of that. And what's the amount we're talking about here for these people? Thank you.
It's the events would be looked at in terms of our standard criteria. And we would be collecting a level of information off them similar to what we might get through our normal application process. It's what we've tried to express there is a sort of desire to have the opportunity to consider something that comes into to say, look, we've having some difficulty with this event. We've lost, say, funding from one of our traditional sources, and we would like to see if you could help support us on that. We've still got formally we've got that close to 65,000 that hasn't been allocated this year. There's also some money that hasn't gone out. There's, I think, a key item is for the Christmas in the Park, 50,000 there. So we're sort of haven't got an exact figure for the remainder of the cancelled events at this stage, but there's in excess of $100,000 we've got available. What we would sort of look at it on a case-by-case basis, and I guess determine what would be a reasonable amount of funding for us to provide. I mean, I don't see it that we would be funding significantly different amounts than what we would normally fund events. So if someone comes in and asks for 75,000, there's probably not many events that would warrant us funding that level of funding. Sorry, I probably can't give you a definitive answer on it, but.
Yeah, supplementary, please, Chair. I suppose, so would this come back to the committee, or because we're delegating it to yourself, to the General Manager, would this come back to the committee, or would it just, that'll be it and we'll just get that at the end of the year in the annual report? Thank you.
Matua, the process that I've spoken to the team about, and which applies to the Committee of the Whole, and that's all the Committee of the Whole, is that there be a memo that would come out to us in regards to any of the delegated authority to the GM that has been exercised. This is why I mentioned earlier, Matua, about the Polyfest. If the Polyfest doesn't go ahead, but it goes on an online platform, there has to be, from my perspective, and hopefully the committees, is that a kōrero will happen with them about how we can assist our rangatahi to go online and still perform, and but on the online basis, and that delegation would sit with the GM, plus also both Davids who are on this call. So there will be a memo. So then at least that'll go out to us to let us know what's happened. David, I think that's what we've agreed upon, and that's normal anyway with any of the delegations that each of the committees have. Is that correct, David? And sorry to interrupt.
Yes, that was what we were sort of anticipating doing. Yeah.
So Matua, that's the process that will follow. There'll be a memo. So there's no hidden things. There's nothing. Everybody be aware, and that memo will come through from Justine, who is the general manager who has the delegation. I'll hand it over to Claudia. There's no other further pātai. I'm going to then open it up after Claudia to any whakaaro. If there's none, I will then move the recommendation or put the recommendation. Kia ora, Claudia.
Kia ora, Chair, and thank you very much for the question, Matua. It's a very useful question. Just to also reassure you, the memos that come to PACE Committee are also signed off by me ahead of coming to PACE, so that there is an internal review process. But the key purpose for why we're proposing this change is the importance around agility that both David and David have mentioned. The industry is needing some additional agility during this time, and this way we're hoping that we can be able to better support the industry and other key events, as Alf mentioned. So I'm very supportive of the delegation from a delegated authority standpoint, and I can reassure you that we have internal oversight processes that will also occur prior to the memo coming to PACE Committee. Thank you.
Kapai, and my middle name is Agility, so look, that ties everything in. So look, there's no further pātai I see in the chat bar, but I'm going to open it up for any whakaaro. 3-second rule. There's none. I will now put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried on voices. David, thank you so much.
Sure.
We'll now move to item 12. I just wanted to acknowledge, Carl, yourself and Letitia Edwards, Head of Strategic Asset Optimization Eke Pānuku, for this particular item. I will move and I will ask for a seconder for this particular.
Second, Chair Collins.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor Collins, for te lawa. So it's been moved and seconded. So, Carl, I'll invite you and Letitia to see if there's anything you wish to add. Kia ora.
Ngā mihi o te ata, kia koutou, ko ka mei toku ingoa, ko Eke Panuku mahi aho. I have nothing to add to this report. Nothing's changed. We've received no submissions, and therefore we request that the committee approve the forwarding of the request to uplift reserve status to the Minister of Conservation. Thank you very much.
Ka pai, Letitia, anything from you before I see if there's any pātai o whakaaro? I'll take that as a no, 3-second rule. So any pātai? Whakaaro? Comment? No, it's been moved and seconded. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
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 Against? Carried. We'll now move to 5.2. I would invite Max Tweedy, Rainbow Advisory Panel. No mai haere mai, Max, welcome. And I'll leave it to you. I'm going to ask for, before you start, a mover and a seconder, please, for the public input. First in, first served.
Happy to second,
Richard. Yeah, Councillor Collins, is that you move, and then Councillor Hills second?
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Yeah, ka pai. So, Max, no mai haere mai, all yours.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Thank you, Councillor Alf. It's really fantastic to have the opportunity to speak to you all today about the Thriving Communities strategy. It's been a really fantastic opportunity for us as panels to be involved in the process of kind of consultation and shaping this strategy within council. And one of the things I think that we're really excited about, and I guess is probably the key piece that I wanted to speak to you about today, was the kind of excitement that our communities had when we did cross-panel workshops and the discussion around what this would mean for our community organisations and community groups. One of the things that we're most excited about was council empowering communities to basically to give communities the resource to provide the solutions that they know that their communities need. So for council to kind of get out of the way and be able to resource communities directly to be able to deliver the solutions that both council and communities actually want. And I think one of the fantastic examples of where this has kind of happened under the status quo, which I think is a pretty good model that we looked at in terms of how this might be implemented, is Proud Centres. So when I'm not wearing my Rainbow Communities Advisory Panel hat, I am the Executive Director of the Auckland Pride Festival. And so the Proud Centres initiative by council started in 2019 and was started as in response to the 3 questions report that the Rainbow Community Advisory Panel had done. And that 3 questions report looked at kind of the needs of rainbow communities in Tāmaki Makaurau. And Proud Centres was developed as a response to one of them, was that there were not enough kind of free pride events throughout Tāmaki Makaurau, and so Auckland Council opened up their community centres to program them as Proud Centres, which allowed community to go in there and program free events across the month of February, which has been really fantastic. And last year there were over, I think, about 150 individual activities throughout the different centres, I think, in over more than 30 centres. And I think what that is a really fantastic example of council providing what they have and what they know best. So that was the venues, any tech resource they had, whether that was projectors or microphones, but then also directly resourcing community to do what they do best, in those community centres. And so what that enabled was kind of community building. There was a range of events from, community workshops. There were potluck dinners, but also, big kind of performances and the like. And so what it actually enabled was all these local communities to kind of come together. And I think that's the real essence of the Thriving Community strategy is council, I think perhaps being more of aware of its position and being able to resource communities directly so that communities are able to provide the solutions that actually they know best how to provide. So, as a kind of cross panel, I think that was one of the things that we're most excited about. And, it's a really we think it's a really fantastic strategy. We're really looking forward to seeing how it'll be implemented and the kind of benefits of this. But, when it was reported back, we thought it was a really fantastic strategy. And so, we're really excited about its adoption at today's committee.
Kapai, Max, thank you. I'm going to open up for any pātai, any questions or whakaaro comments. That's because I got nothing in the chat bar because what you've said is just so precise. So there's no pātai. I'll go through to whakaaro. Councillor Dalton.
Sorry, while I'm here, support what Max is saying around empowering communities to make decisions to deliver and how we get to resource that. So I just thank you for your presentation and the recognition that council needs to step aside and enable communities to deliver. Thank you. Thanks, Alpha. I will speak to that item. Thank you.
No, Kapai, I don't know whether anybody had heard what I heard. I just heard a rap, which sounded really good because it was cutting out. But Max, I don't know if you understood, and Angela, if you could sort of just, I just heard the breaking up, the rap song. So I'll give you one more opportunity if that's okay.
I want the item Alpha must stop breaking up. I am still breaking up. It's a shame. Scientific connection.
Okay. I think we got the gist of it, which is supporting the kōrero that Max just did, but also the actual agenda item. Councillor Collins, pātai and then whakaaro.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry, Chair, I'm a bit slow to type into the the chat box for my question. Kia ora, Max, and thanks for your presentation. I just wanted to ask, did you, as you were going through it, and apologies if you can hear Bubba in the background, as you were participating in this these discussions, and I recognise the comments you made around the Proud Centres, which was a really good example. The report's got some really telling, challenging ideas and statistics. Did you feel a sense of hope, and were you feeling enthusiastic that we can make some really genuine differences in the community? I personally think it's a great strategy, but I just wondered, how did the discussions go, and feeling like there was a real sense of energy around the possibilities that are in front of us? Did you have a particular sense?
Kia ora, Councillor Collins. Yeah, now that you kind of said it, it's really interesting. I think back to those couple of workshops that we did, and of course they were kind of over Zoom, so we didn't have that kind of beautiful connection in person. But I think, when we were discussing, across panels, so this was the Pacific panel, this was the youth panel, it was kind of things that, we had been, kind of banging on about to council for quite some time, of just, we, in community know the best solutions for the problems that we face. And so there was a lot of hope, I think, in those discussions, and there was a sense of actually maybe something's about to shift, and maybe something is actually going to change in the way that these kind of programs are delivered. And I think especially through, the impacts of COVID-19 that maybe weren't specifically felt by, rainbow communities, but, there were obviously, but, Pacific people and young people especially, they felt like that there was a really hopeful shift after some of the impacts of COVID-19 and their abilities to kind of, be empowered to I guess, not just understand the challenge that they face really intimately, but provide solutions for those. So yeah, definitely think there was a lot of hope.
Councillor Collins, you can go straight to whakaaro.
Oh, awesome. I just wanted to say thank you very much for your presentation. I think it's wonderful to hear from you, Max, as well as getting a sense of how the discussions went with the diversity panels. I know that when the Pacific panels had we had a phone call, they were feeling really excited, and it was undergirded by a real sense of we've got to do something different. And Max, I think you cheekily, I think it was, I interpret it as a cheeky comment around council getting out of the way, and the Pacific panel had a very similar take on things too. And I think I say it was cheeky, but there's probably some truth to it in the sense that we can partner really well, but really allow communities to take full control of what they want to see happen. So I just want to say, I want to say thank you, because I know that from the Pacific panel's perspective, Chair, it was a really engaging conversation, and the ideas that they were starting to reflect on were really exciting. And so I just wanted to say thank you for all the diversity panels for really being engaged in this discussion, was really important. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Max.
Kia ora, thank you. So look, there's no further whakaaro, and it's been moved and seconded to thank Max, so I'll move the recommendation. I'll put it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Kia ora, Max.
Kia ora.
Ka kite. Item 13, the adoption, it's been moved, the same two that moved the public input have moved and seconded. So, yep, sorry, Matua, did you want to move or second it? I just had Councillor Collins and Councillor Hills.
No, sorry, I was,
Yep.
just pushed the wrong button.
Oh, ka pai. Ka pai. So, it's been moved and seconded, and I'm just going to invite our staff, so Dave and who's the Senior Policy Advisor, and Kataraina, the General Manager, Community and Social Policy. So it's now on the table for any comment. So tēnā korua, Dave, rawa ko Kataraina.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Dave Jaggs, tōku ingoa. Yeah, I'm a Senior Policy Advisor in the Community and Social Policy team, and joined today by Kataraina Maki and Liz Civil as well. Just before presenting this, I just wanted to acknowledge and mihi to the large number of people that have been involved in this along the way. I have the honour and privilege of presenting it here to committee today for adoption, but I wouldn't have got this far without all of the people that have been involved along the way. So just really wanted to acknowledge that there's a lot of mahi that's gone into this.
Kia ora.
So we are presenting to committee today to seek the adoption of the refreshed Ngā Hapori Momoho Thriving Community Strategy. Thriving Communities is Council's community wellbeing strategy and was originally adopted in 2014. The draft strategy we're presenting today builds on a 2018 review of that strategy and the subsequent recommendations that were included within that. This new draft strategy sets out how Auckland Council will contribute to creating a fairer, more sustainable tamaki makaurau, where every Aucklander can feel like they belong. To develop this strategy, staff engaged extensively with our diverse communities, as you've heard, and we've engaged with a large number of community groups, mana whenua, Matawaka and Pacific Whānau. Throughout this process, we heard from a wide range of whānau and communities about what they feel like they need to thrive. We know, however, that currently not all Aucklanders have these things, and therefore not everyone is thriving equitably. As well as this, we've heard that tamaki makaurau has faced and continues to face a number of significant challenges, such as COVID, which has only exacerbated these issues. So this means that to achieve the kind of tamaki makaurau we want, the strategy needs to address these three key challenges, which is growing wealth and income inequality, the pace and scale of social change, and the changing climate as well. So this strategy about addressing these challenges, about achieving equitable outcomes, and doing what we can as a council to create a city where everyone has the opportunity to live a good life. So this strategy is outcomes-based, and it focuses on what we want to achieve for communities. The outcomes are the building blocks of what it means to thrive, and are aligned to both the Auckland Planned outcomes of belonging and participation, as well as the Māori outcomes of Kia ora tamaki makaurau. The strategy provides focus and direction, but is not prescriptive, which makes it more adaptable to current and future challenges, including some of those which might be unforeseen at the moment. The outcomes are underpinned by 6 objectives, and this provides a bit of direction for the kind of actions that the council group will deliver. We also recognise that we need to ensure that we utilise all the roles and levers available to us as a council group, which will involve working with partners, particularly for areas where we might not hold the primary lever, such as within housing provision. And as we've talked about and heard from Max, we recognise that to deliver on this strategy and outcomes and objectives, we might need to make some shifts in the way we work. So this includes greater integration and less siloed working, utilising more targeted approaches to meet the needs of diverse communities, and focusing on our role as an enabler to encourage community to identify and respond to the things that matter to them. We also need to ensure our investment reflects the intended outcomes of the strategy, and so we've included 4 investment principles that guide the use of the existing resource as well as future business planning. So in terms of next steps, while the strategy is setting out a vision for the next 10 years, we recognise that implementation, especially in the short term, will be crucial to the success of the strategy. So to bring it to life, we'll be developing an implementation plan, as well as monitoring and evaluation framework to assess the impact we're having. There's not currently any additional budget associated with the strategy, therefore there will be a key emphasis on prioritising and redirecting the use of existing resource, including ensuring the outcomes, objectives, key shifts and investment principles are embedded within the council team business planning process. However, as part of the next phase of developing the implementation plan, where we identify that there might be new opportunities for new initiatives in a particular area of space, or to support existing initiatives to grow or scale up, we will be developing a business plan with options for additional funding. These will all be brought back to committee later in the year for consideration and approval. So back to you, Chair, for any pārtai.
Kia ora. Yeah, so look, I don't know, Katarina or Liz, if there's anything you want to say before I open it up for pārtai and whakaaro. No, Liz?
No further things from me, thank you.
Ka pai. So look, I'll open up for pārtai first. So I have Matua Kake.
Kia ora anō, nei rā te karamihi atu ki a koutou mō tēnei kaupapa ngā hapuri momo ho, tēnā koe. Hey, my question is in terms of, nice words in terms of the sense of inclusion and thriving and so on, but we have a new sector of our community and it's known as the unvaccinated community. In this thriving community strategy, how have we what's in it to ensure that that unvaccinated community are part of our thriving community?
Kia ora, thank you for your question. So the strategy is at this level still fairly high level in terms of providing that direction, but obviously the spirit is that we want everyone to be included and to have the ability to thrive. So we'll be I think a part of the spirit of this is kind of looking at why divisions might exist currently, why people currently feel excluded, and what we can do to do that, to include those people. We'll be looking at options to keep people safe as well. So yeah, I guess it would be partnering with a range of community partners to try and include people as much as possible. And again, so looking at the reasons behind that. Liz or Katarina, I'm not sure if you wanted to expand on that at all.
Kia ora te rangatira. I just have one example of how we have been trying to work through this with our smoke-free mahi, where if you look at statistics about the percentiles who are unvaccinated and those who smoke, they line up quite a bit. And so if we were to exclude the unvaccinated totally from our programs, then we wouldn't be really reaching the large portion of people who also are currently smoking. So one of the things we do to make sure we're still inclusive with that is actually we work with our DHB partners to ensure that our staff can still work safely with those who are not yet vaccinated, to make sure we're still doing the mahi and giving the messages out around smoke-free. We are still meeting, but in safe ways, in car parks with proper PPE and also combining with the practices that health workers have. So it's just a small example where you really try to think about those groupings. Much of the strategy is about the hard to reach. Even as staff, we've thought really hard about how do we engage with those who are not vaccinated, given that we have really tough health and safety rules for ourselves, and we've been working through those processes in ways where we can do submissions and engagement with those who are unvaccinated, and do it in specific ways where, you know, we do it a little bit outdoors. We're lucky it's summer, you know, one person at a time, people can book in, do things online as well. A lot of people who are unvaccinated also don't have access to all the technology for virtual, so you know we need safe ways to do kanohi ki te kanohi. So those are just small examples, but there's stuff we're already working on, and the action plan is an area where we really do have to engage with those groups and think that through for however long that division might last. Kia ora.
Ka pai, Tony. Matua. Yeah. Ka pai. Claire, I saw your hand up and I didn't know whether you wanted to reply to Matua Kake's pātai.
Kia ora, Chair, and thank you very much, Matua, for the question. It's a very good question, and I endorse and support Kataraina's comment to that as well. Perhaps the other reassurance I can give you is that the current circumstances will eventually change, and we're very closely watching for any changes to the public health information so that we can continue to adapt how we operate our services and how accessible we can make those services to our communities. Currently, what we're doing is we are implementing a number of steps practically and from an operational standpoint to ensure that people who are unvaccinated and who may not be able to enter all of our sites, for example, that they can receive services in other ways. Just yesterday, I visited our East Coast Bays Library, and in that site, we offer a separate entrance for people. People can have a click and collect service, and they often will make front door requests for books and access to some of the library facilities. So we will continue to do that, and we will continue to make sure we can adapt as quickly as possible and as flexibly as possible so that we can support our communities during this time and maximise inclusion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia. I'll go pātai for Councillor Collins.
Kia ora, Chair, and thank you for the report. I really liked listening to what was presented and reading it. I've just got maybe one question, and thanks Matua Tony, because I think you picked up on a really important issue. But there are some really stark there's stark data in the report, and there, you know, Māori Pacific below the median income, high overcrowding of youth, and in particular Pacific. And the interesting one I found was the only 50% of people who were surveyed feel connected and a sense of belonging. So I think we've got some real facilitation work to do for the community and making sure they feel connected. So in that light, well done, everybody. I was just wondering of the idea of targeted approaches, and I know this might be more something for the implementation and monitoring plan. Do you feel that when we get to that point, we're going to be targeted enough and monitoring enough that the groups that have been identified as really suffering at the moment and feeling excluded are going to be served in the way in which this plan is implemented and monitored, that we're not just taking an overarching approach, that we're actually going to pull data, because we know even for rainbow youth that homelessness is a massive issue for them too. So I'm just wondering how, I'm not saying how particular we'll get, but just if we'll get a genuine sense of how we're making an impact on the groups that are really hurting at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. And I think that's definitely obviously what we want to kind of achieve, and one of the key elements of this will be developing that monitoring and evaluation framework, and we plan to use existing measures that already exist within the council and within sort of, you know, publicly available to us, but we also sort of doing that baseline measure right from the start as well, and then continuing to kind of evolve and use that monitoring and evaluation framework to further inform the future work and kind of future evaluation and implementation plans. So yeah, the use of that data and making sure that we're actually having meaningful impact will be a key element to this, and something we'll be working very carefully alongside the actions as we plan this out. Yeah, Liz and Katarina, would you like to expand at all?
Yeah, perhaps one thing I can mention is we're also looking at how we get and identify interventions that work with certain population groups or life stages or people that are facing different vulnerabilities. So what works, and how can we use what works in Auckland better, so that we know we can be making an impact, and how do we measure that, and how do we do more targeted evaluation, so not just high level data but measuring some of the interventions that we do much more closely. So it's going to be a combination of all of those things, I think, identifying what we know works and how do we know it works, and applying some of those within the work that we do. Katarina, did you want to add anything?
I was just going to do a data management thing where we go, you know, we all know the problem of attribution of action and activities directly to outcomes, and particularly in the social space where, you know, the report does identify we're not always the key player with the key levers. There are many others. However, we will take the approach we do to I Am Auckland. So I Am Auckland does focus on the outcomes that our tamariki are experiencing, and we try to just show our contribution alongside those outcomes. So even though there are many other organisations contributing to the state of those outcomes, and we are not able to always show attribution to that state from our contributions, it is a way of keeping outcomes focused and not activity focused. And that will also be part of the approach for ngā hapori momoho as well.
Chair, just one quick supplementary, and it might not need to be answered, but I also have a particular interest when the team come back, and one of the points notes that social cohesion, higher levels of social cohesion can equate to increase in economic performance and point 24 of the report, amongst other things like greater innovation and better health and justice outcomes. And I think maybe given what you've all just said, it would be interesting. I know that it says the evidence shows that, but I'd be really interested in that evidence, and in particular the evidence that we're getting from Auckland and our partners to show some of that stuff. So thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, whawhtai lawa whionga. Mato Wilcox, he pātai I rua.
Kia ora. The first one is regard to, you know, the key recognition of the strategy is the enabling of mana motuhake or Māori-led approaches to social well-being. So how is the council going to need to shift its approach and structures to enable this to happen? And will the strategy support this? That's the first question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been mentioned throughout there, and one of the things we really want to do is to enable that mana motuhake. And we recognise that we will need to potentially make some shifts, and also I think, you know, as Max was kind of talking about earlier when he's presenting, sometimes it might be that we need to kind of step back a bit and encourage and enable and kind of look at how we can use our resources to support that, and sort of recognise where there's really good mahi going on already, and where we can support that. So we'll be kind of think about it through our implementation plan, what that looks like and what we need to be doing. And I guess that's the point of the strategy, is to kind of encourage that shift in culture throughout the organisation to kind of think in these ways from now into the future. Yeah, Liz, Kat, any kind of
I mean, perhaps supplementary to that, Dave, is that one of the investment principles is around supporting Māori led and Māori for Māori. So, you know, that will, if those principles are guiding business planning within operational teams, then they will be investing in those sorts of initiatives that are being led for Māori by Māori. So, you know, it's not just an aspiration, it's actually putting investment criteria behind it as well to help drive that kind of shift that we want to see. And to be fair, some of that is happening already. So this is about actually making this more a direction across the council family.
Oh, yes. No, thank you. Thank you for that. The second one is more of a technical point. One of the recommendations, number A, is tango. How does that? Sorry, it's a different way of using tango. I would have thought whai would have been better or something like that. I'm just trying to understand that. To me, is tango hi o hu, not we take your shoes off, and I'm trying to understand what tango means in this kaupapa.
Matua, can I just sort of come in and is there any chance just to contact Dave or Liz in regards to your pātai you've just asked, just to sort of, I think that might be an idea, so then there'd be a kōrero that will happen between you fellas. Is that okay, Dave and Liz, instead of looking at the reasoning behind the use of it?
Yeah, through the chair, I believe tango is the word set by the governance group for adopt. So perhaps that needs to happen within the Democracy Services team to look at that use of the word. So we're just using what's specified in the template.
Yeah, but kia ora matua, we'll go and talk to Phil Wilson and his team about the list. I'll send you the list so you can see the list of words we've got given for recommendations as well.
Yeah. No, I can just hear my nanny
saying tango hea o hu.
That's right, take your shoes off. So I'm just trying to understand how it means adopt, that's all.
Yeah. It's like a lot of Māori words though, Matua, it's like a lot of Māori words, they mean go forward and backwards.
Yeah, that's right.
Ako means to learn and to teach, for example.
Yeah, that's right.
Tango, to put on, to adopt, to take off. Yeah, it's the same context. Otherwise, it's our Ngāpuhi dialect.
If it's Ngāpuhi dialect, it must be good. So I'll leave it at that. So there's no further pātai, Matua?
No,
ka pai te rana?
Ka pai.
Okay, there's no further I don't have in the chat bar. I'm going to go to Whakaaro and Councillor Dalton, you're first, and then followed by Councillor Hills.
Is that quite Alpha? Is my sound okay? Can you hear me all right, or am I breaking up?
It's still the same, Angela, but I don't know what. Yeah.
Without my headphones. It's still breaking up.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, Official, did you understand that? I didn't, because I see you shaking your head, going yes.
Yeah, I was just agreeing with Councillor Dalton that you're still breaking up.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, Ange, have you got headphones?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, they're not working.
There's a suggestion in there that if you turned off your camera, that could possibly work. Can we try that one, Councillor Dalton, please?
What's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No, it's not much better.
That's not the issue then, Angela, because, sorry, right. Councillor Dalton.
I'll reboot.
Yeah, still can't. Sorry. So look, while we wait for Councillor Dalton to come back on, I'm going to go to Councillor Hills for your whakaaro, your kōrero, please.
Kia ora, Chair, and thank you and all the staff for this work. I think it's awesome to see we have this policy, but it's now completely embedded in kaupapa Māori values first and foremost, and then it extends to the whole community as a diverse community, but built on those Māori values, which I think is very strong and also aligns with the Auckland Plan and across all our other policies moving forward. But I think because the values are so meaningful and often you can take much more from the Pākehā versions of those values, I think that it's going to be much more meaningful going forward. What this policy has seems much more in the positive than in the negative than we have been in the past. So we are talking about vulnerable communities. We are talking about the massive issues we have to deal with, but they are all from a positive perspective about what we can do, what people are doing in the face of adversity and the need to act on equity, and much more in the positive. So I think that is good too. Often we take everything down, can take it down the negative path, which gives people less hope and gives people, less things that feel connected to the council whānau, but also the city. But the other thing is, I think this is also leading much more closely aligned to where my thinking is, and where my thinking was on local board too, that sometimes it is just about council being the awhi, being the support to groups and communities by getting out of the way. So being there to support, being there to give resources where we can, but not being overly complicated and making things more difficult, because I know that people in our communities do give up when things are too difficult or too expensive, or they know it could be done far more easier. I think, as Max said, around things like Proud Centres, that could have been something that we, I know there was a council-led, but we actually enabled many groups across the entire city to do different things within our centres and make sure our centres right across from our libraries to our community centres to our parks and reserves were inclusive for all, but also were exciting. But we also allowed people to be flexible with those spaces and trust community to really put on their events and add their flavour to it without us being too prescriptive. And I think we're going to do that. And we are seeing that more with Matariki and Chinese New Year and a whole lot of other important things that are happening in our city. So I just want to say that this is building on so much work that has come over the last decade and the previous Thriving Communities strategy as well. So I don't want to disregard any of that, but this is really another step up from where the city is going. So I just want to acknowledge you, Chair, and your Deputy Chair, and also all the staff and community that have been involved in this, and the advisory panels, which give such fulsome advice in those last sort of check periods. But just want to say I'm really happy to see it here and hope that it continues to be embedded across the organisation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. Look, I'm waiting for Councillor Dalton. Councillor Dalton, are you back online? Maya, I've got an idea as to what I have to do from standing orders around waiting until Councillor Dalton comes back just to have a kōrero e whakaaro on this. And I know that Kataraina, the next the next item at least, is part of your team. So Maya, what can I do? Because I don't want to exclude Councillor Dalton in regards to any whakaaro she has. I was thinking of just sort of putting this to the side and then starting item 14, and when Councillor Dalton comes on is to then recommit item 13. So Maya, can you advise, please?
Sorry, helps if I unmute. Yes, we can do that.
Okay,
the short answer.
If it's okay with the committee, because I know that Councillor Dalton is trying to get back on, but I also know that she wanted to give her whakaaro about the particular item. So if it's okay with the committee, I would want to go back to 14, then I'll come back when Councillor Dalton's on and her microphone is working, and then we can finish off with 13. So if there's no objections. Yeah. Is that okay with everybody? 3-second rule. So sorry, Dave and Liz, I just need to make sure that Councillor Dalton has a say. Okay, kapai. So Maya, we'll move to, and Kalinda and Sophie, can we move to item 14, please? Item 14 is the initial findings, community lease rent pricing structure. I know when it came to a workshop, there was a lot of interest because it is something that everybody is wanting to have an input. So Nancy will be presenting, and Koro, the Senior Policy Manager, and Nancy, the Principal Policy Analyst. So I'm going to move this item, and I'm just going to ask for a seconder. Councillor Casey?
Yep.
So it's on the table for discussion. So Nancy and Koro, I'll leave that to you both now. So Councillor Dalton, just to let you know, just gave you the opportunity to come back on. We will go back to item 13 because I know what you want to say on item 13. We will give you the opportunity, but we'll do this one first. Is that okay with you?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Great, thanks.
Okay. So Nancy and Koro, I'll leave it to you. It's been moved and seconded.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Nancy Chu tōku ingoa, Principal Policy Advisor from Community and Social Policy. It's my pleasure to be here today. Also joining me today are my managers, Kate Maki and Carol Kenner. I'll do a short introduction and happy to answer any questions you might have on the paper. So the paper in front of you presents the initial findings of the rent pricing structure review for community leases. You might recall back in November last year, we had a workshop with you on this topic in which you raised a number of questions about cost of leases and how the rent pricing system works in other local authorities. In this paper, we seek your approval for staff to provide an in-depth information report and organize a direction-setting workshop with the committee in August 2022. The information report will focus on answering your queries and providing further information on relevant domestic and international community lease rent pricing options. We also seek your appointment of a joint working group to provide feedback on the options as part of the information report back to the committee. We consider there is a low reputational risk to carry out the information report, as community groups might believe Council is proposing changes rather than obtaining further information. This can be managed through clear communication about the information we're after, its purpose, and next steps. So that's a short introduction. Thank you.
Kia ora, Nancy. Thank you. Koro?
I don't have anything to add, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Katarana. Okay, so look, I just opened it up for partai. In particular, I've got one partai first, Nancy, and please give us the justification. I think it's stored with the working group. This is still 2 by 2 by 1, as in 2 councillors, 2 local board, and 1 independent Māori statutory board. And I just need to sort of get the justification around that, and I'll be interested then to end up getting any partai around any of the recommendations we got in front of us. Kia ora.
Kate, would you like to?
Yeah, I'll just answer that one. This is, we've run quite a few joint working groups, particularly for bylaws, has been the area where we've done them the most. They have all been 2 elected members from local boards, 2 councillors, and 1 independent Māori statutory board member. Some of that is about quickly managing to get everyone together and to get time in the diaries to go through the work. It's quite even hard with just 5 to get the diaries lined up to get the sessions done. So mostly it's a real issue of diaries and everyone being able to engage quite deeply in the kōrero. I know that independent Māori statutory board members on the committee today have participated in those. So has Councillor Casey, so they can give you some insights. Maya has to organise them, and so they can be quite difficult when the numbers are bigger than that.
Kapai. First partai is Councillor Dalton.
Tēnā koe, Alf, and just acknowledging you gave me a call about this report, but I hadn't read it, so I apologise I haven't got back to you to let you know what I'm saying now. I just wanted to question why we need the working group. So when I read the report, it's a good report. Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for presenting it. It's a good report. And the information, it seems to be, quite sound, and there needs to be a decision on which way forward. The end result is, I think local boards have decision making over this. So what is the strategy around a working group of 2 councillors, 2 local boards and IMSB, please?
Kia ora, Councillor. So, as you might know, back in, I think it was October 2019, there was a set of new agreed principles and processes for local board input into regional policy. So part of this work can affect the community leasing policy, which is our regional policy. So because this has options, and the guidance does talk about when we are considering options that may impact on a regional policy, that we assess the impact on local board governance and the interest. So staff assess that this would be of high impact on their governance role and also of high interest, which generally means we need a joint working group to consider the options.
Can I have a follow-up question?
Kapai.
I just didn't think that we needed a working group. I felt that the information is pretty sound, and that your team could bring a recommendation back to, you would work with local boards because it is absolutely in their space. They're most impacted, as will their budgets be. But then you could bring the recommended model back to the governing body for approval of the model once that work's been done, because of the decision-making role they have over the leases and whether they subsidise or not.
Through the chair, it is the agreed process, so that's what we are following.
Katarai, just a part based on Councillor Dalton's one. So what happens in regards to the process now around consultation, please?
So in terms of, I'm confused now. We have a joint working group who would consider the options once staff had developed them up, and they consider them, they provide comments on the options and generally say which one they might prefer.
And then it comes back to the committee?
To PACE, yes.
Yeah, it comes back to PACE committee. And is there any further consultation after it comes back to the PACE committee, once if the working group is set up? Is there any further consultation post the meeting coming back?
So that would depend on the direction of the committee at the workshop, but generally not once the joint working group is that method of engagement. So generally not.
Okay. Angela, anything further? No? Okay. Councillor Watson, Pātai.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a further question to this composition of the joint working group, and it's I take the point that Katarina was making about the the logistics of diary organisation, but I think this is such a sensitive issue, and certainly has been in the past, that it would be desirable to have some sort of geographic representation, Mr. Chair. I mean, I know you were there, of course, as chair of the committee, but and I'll be one of those councillors, but just another councillor for the rest of Auckland, I think is erring on the side of kind of diary efficiency, as opposed to perhaps giving more of an insight into what's happening in what are big chunks of the region. So, and I look, Mr. Chair, at point 31, just in terms of the investigation that's going to these current lease costs. Now, I know in my area, I'm aware of some of the lease with controversies in the past, but I have very little understanding of the ward as a whole, far less, say north of the bridge, if we take one kind of geographic entity. So I'm just wondering, Mr. Chair, either through you or one of the officers, how the working party is going to be sufficiently represented by such a relatively low membership, given the extent of these leases, the different circumstances they involve, and the fact that this is a very, very sensitive issue. I don't know how the whole area can be given justice in the joint working group if it's as constrained as being proposed at the moment. So I'd just appreciate a little bit of feedback on that. Thank you.
Kataraina, for you, and then I'll go to you first.
So just to highlight that the joint working group is to consider options. It's not an information gathering group. It's a group where the options are presented and they consider them and provide their feedback. I don't know that they were ever thought to be representative when the agreed guidelines and principles were agreed by local boards and governing body. They were a method of a joint group of people considering options and providing it back. To be representative, the groups would be very large indeed. So these are about bringing two layers of governance and their ideas and experience to bear on the options and their view of that back to our committee. So that all I can say is the experience we've had with them in the past, where they have been 2-2-1, but of course it is up to elected members to decide the numbers for these.
Kataraina, to try and reach a compromise at least middle ground, or if we can. If it was, and even again, I'll be sort of getting some feedback from the committee, if it ended up at 3-3-1. I mean, how would you be placed with that? I know that we are all regional councillors, but I also know with the report that Nancy has completed that there are some areas within our region who have more than others in regards to community facilities. So I'd just be guided by you around trying to get a compromise, Kataraina.
And of course we could make that work, and we would start immediately to start booking in time after this meeting. Yeah. So of course it's just our suggestion of what has worked in the past with these groups. So 3-3-1, of course, we'd make that work as well.
Okay then. So Councillor Watson, I'm just sort of thinking as a compromise, possibly in regards to the 3-3-1. I'd be interested in your view, and then obviously views of others. I've got still some partai to go, but just wanted to get your kōrero on that, Councillor Watson, before I move to the other partai I have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I guess obviously any options analysis will be dictated by the information that's gathered, and so I guess the wider the perspective on that, the better from my perspective. I was perhaps thinking a little more ambitiously of 4, but Mr. Chair, if you see that as a compromise that has some merit, it's certainly an improvement on what is before us. So I guess if you see that as satisfactory, Mr. Chair, then I think that would be desirable.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Kataraina, I know that Phil was mentioned. I'm really going to be guided by the committee as we go through our partai. I'll be guided by them, and I would love to get your comment once we end up going through our partai around that particular one. So I'm going to go to His Worship the Mayor, and then Councillor Dalton has a further partai, and then Matua Wilcox.
Yeah, thanks, Alf. It is a question, but I'll briefly comment, almost answering my own question, if you give me indulgence to do that. The question is, point 6 of the executive summary says there's a low reputational risk that community groups may believe that council is proposing changes to current lease pricing rather than obtaining further information. My question is why you think that's a low risk. I think that it's quite a pronounced risk, actually. As soon as you start looking at models for how you might price a lease, that's what more than 1,000 community and sports groups that I've got listed in front of me at the moment will think. I'm not against the recommendations of the report, but I think that you need to couch it in a different way, because if I'm honest, and I think we need to be honest with each other, as soon as you put out something that looks like you're going to, you might even be recovering administrative costs or renewal costs, and this could push leases into thousands of dollars easily. There's going to be a huge reaction, and I don't believe that you're proposing, if we were to propose that we were to move to those models, that you'd get it through council because of that reaction. But why I'm actually in favour of doing this is because I think that the level of support that we as council give to our community groups in this manner is practically invisible and probably taken for granted even by the groups that use it, who have no sense that what council is doing has a real cost attached to it. So why I'm in favour is because I think we need to quantify the value of the services that council provides, and people, that includes council ratepayers and those using the assets, know what the value of that council contribution is. Now, it may be that you price a bit more than $1, but if you were to even recover administrative costs, make this a question actually, if you don't mind, Nancy, the average administrative cost, what would that be? The average renewal cost, what would that be? I think you're talking about very large sums of money. And I just don't think that the 20 councillors that are participating on this call are going to go back to their sports clubs, to their citizens advice bureaus, to their community groups doing good work on behalf of the community and say, actually, we're going to lift your lease to that sum. I do acknowledge that because you provide this free, there's no incentive for people to utilise the resources properly. So quantifying what it's costing is really important to do, but to avoid a huge backlash. I mean, you're going to report back or have a workshop in August, 3 months before the election. I think your reputational risk that you're going to move in this direction is very high, and politics will ensure that that is high because people will choose to mislead or misuse that information. So, one, what would the cost be? Two, do you agree that the reputational risk actually might be higher than that? And don't you need to build into this report that the fundamental and the first purpose of this is to be able to quantify what we spend and to ensure that that spending is getting value for money so that we have good utilisation. That way, I think you would minimise opposition and you wouldn't scare the horses. Sorry, Mr. Chair, if that's a mixture of comment and question, but I think it's really important. Thank you.
Kapai, so I go to Nancy. Nancy, in regards to the apartheid that's been posed by His Worship the Mayor, I'll let you answer that, and then if there's any further from you, Korol and Kataraina, I'll go to you both before we move on.
Do you want me to answer that, Nancy?
Yeah.
Thanks to the
Sorry
chair.
about that, common mistake. Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, we do acknowledge the reputational risk. And this is why in the report, we suggest that when we go back, it's only an information report. we won't be seeking any decisions on the options. Also, a key part of it is the messaging when we talk to different groups, that it's really about information gathering, that we just interested about what other authorities are doing and how it could be applied to our circumstances. And we do acknowledge that there's a wide range of groups with different needs, even increasing it more than $1 could be a big impact for some of the groups. That will be a key part of our work going forward. I don't know whether Kate or Carol want to comment further.
Sorry, there's another part of that question. If we were to charge administrative costs, what sort of range of costs would that involve? And if we were to charge renewal and maintenance costs, what would that lift it to? I think we need to bring a sense of reality into what this might mean.
Yeah, I can answer that. So in terms of administration costs, that's only talking about staff costs for signing the contracts, following up with the leaseholders. The figure we got back in 2018 when we did the review was around $2,000 to $3,000, around that range. That figure needs to be revised, and that's part of the work we're proposing. In terms of the renewal costs, it's not really something we can provide an average figure, because we have a huge range of assets in the profile, and the renewal cost really varies a lot depending on the ownership, the type of facility, the age, and utilization. And the last time it was your renewal, so it's difficult to provide an average figure on that. But like you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, it's likely to be really, really expensive for some of the facilities.
And so just to add to that, so only the staff costs to administer the lease are unique to community leases. Maintenance and renewal costs apply to any asset that council own, whether they are leased or not. So those are very different types of costs, and I think it's important to realize that, and we will make sure that it's very clear in our reporting.
Your Worship?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, the administrative costs by themselves are obviously reasonably substantial. And I understand what Nancy is saying, that, some people are just leasing land. Some people have got a building in with it. I mean, I think we need to know the reality of what those costs are, but I'm really worried that you'll frighten the hell out of everybody, that there'll be a maelstrom of protests, that it would be better to avoid by presenting it and maybe in the way that I've suggested, or some other way if others have got ideas on it, than to leave the impression, as I'm sure when I read this report, I get the impression, I see a graph there that says, we can move from a flat rate through to cost recovery with rebates, cost recovery with no rebates, market rent with rebates. The message to me, as a layperson reading that, would be this is the direction in which council's going to go. And I think to head off the storm that you will otherwise face, you need to say, look, these are real costs, these are real contributions by council. We are not intending to move down this track, but we need to quantify that so we can be sure that we're using these resources properly. I just think that avoids creating a crisis, which then almost every councillor will back off, because nobody wants to upset the 30, 40, 50, 60 groups in their community that are working on behalf of their community, organising sports, etc. So I just think we need to approach this exercise in a realistic way, and we need to take that on board. But I'd really be keen on hearing other councillors' views on that. Thank you.
So through the chair, just to reassure, we have heard those comments by Mr. Mayor, and we can make sure that our communications reflect the concerns you have raised.
Thanks,
so you stole my thunder, Katarana, and I take that comment, Your Worship, the Mayor's is your comment, and I won't be putting your name down. So I'll leave it at that. I've still got questions, and I'm going to Councillor Dalton, then Councillor Simpson, and then I'll get into whakaaro. And then after that, I'm going to make a change, if Councillor Casey is okay, that the working group be 331 as a compromise. So if we could get that at least put in there. Councillor Casey, are you okay with that change?
Yep, all good, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So I'll go to Councillor Dalton, Pātai.
Yeah, thanks, Alf. Just going back to the working group again, I understand the formula for it, but the recommendation for it, I'm sorry, Katarana, I missed it. It might have been in the report, I missed it, or you might have mentioned it when you answered my earlier question. So the decision to have a working group for this piece of work, was that from a committee?
Through the chair, it's called the October 2019 Agreed Principles and Processes for Local Board Involvement in the development of regional policy. It's a set of guidelines that governing body agreed that were worked up between local boards and committees around local board involvement in regional policy. So it has formulas and things that we have to follow. We have to do assessments. It does depend on, where a project is and what advantages there are. And so you could say we were a bit precautionary with this, because when there are options being developed that may impact on regional policy, you'll see in the report we've said it may impact depending on future decision making. So because of that, we undertook the assessment and have recommended the Joint Working Party.
Okay, so there is a test, and then you will make the decision as to whether it needs a working group. But this is going to be producing, not going to be reducing any recommendations to the next committee. It's just providing some information.
Yep.
Probably a good reason. The Mayor's given good reasons why it might not be a political working group at this point in time.
Yep.
Alf, so I just wanted to clarify.
Go that way. We've just done it based on the potential for future decision making. So that's what we put in paragraph in the local board impacts, because it's dependent on future decision making. So at the workshop, part of the workshop in August will be strategic direction setting. So the previous workshop asked you, do you want to go further? We kind of got a yes, we would like some more information. This is why this report's here, because we will bring back options if this report is approved, and those options can be used for future decision making. We thought it would be a good idea to get local board feedback now, just in case, because we're unsure about future decision making. We can, however, you cannot do it. You don't have to. These are recommendations to you based on our advice. You can make an amendment to Resolution C.
Thanks, Katarina. Thanks, Alf. Reserve my right to speak, please.
Yeah, no, kapai, I got you down. Councillor Simpson, Pātai, then I'll move to whakaaro.
Yeah, I'm afraid, Mr. Chair, I'm following the line of the Mayor. I'm just trying to get the process right here. So this will be, if in agreement with this, we are getting an information report with no recommendations in August to ask for direction setting. So why are we writing a report? What we're doing this to, when will the recommendations, when or if will the recommendations be made? Or when do staff think the recommendations should be made?
The recommendations will be made when we're instructed to go that additional step. So at the workshop we had last year, we didn't really get approval to bring back full-blown options for decision making. We really got feedback about we don't exactly want to stop looking at this anymore, which was one of the choices you could have made. We believe we got feedback which is we are interested in knowing more, but knowing more isn't the same as making a decision and having options for decision making. Hence us bringing back an information project.
Okay. So you're really saying that the whole purpose of this is to actually understand the true cost of community lease pricing. I mean, the true cost of community leasing. Full stop.
So our understanding from the workshop was that many elected members were interested in better understanding the different rent community lease pricing structures. So in this report, we give you a very initial high-level view of those. And so two things, more information on administration and renewal costs, and you wanted more information on the different options. However, this is the point of bringing this paper, because you might not move any of the resolutions and go, actually, we don't want any further information at this stage, and staff can stop doing any further work on it.
Right, and I do understand C. I do understand the theory behind C, i.e. you're using a policy direction. But actually, you know, we don't but actually...
Yep, so...
because we're not deciding recommendations, why do we need C if we're not deciding?
So the strategic direction in August might go, thank you staff, we like these, we want you to bring them back for decision making to a committee. And at that point, if you made that decision, which is part of the strategic direction, staff thought it was preferable that you had some feedback from a joint working party across some of those options. So we did it because it was dependent on future decisions.
So sorry, Mr. Chair, last supplementary. This is not as simple as I thought. Your working party occurs after the report from B, is that correct? And the workshop.
So part of the process will be to get the options, do a full options assessment, and then we generally workshop those with the joint working party, who provide comments on the pros and cons from their experience and perspective. So they add to the analysis, and they generally say which one they might prefer if anyone was to move forward. That information is brought to you and we go, here are the pros and cons, here's how it might work for council, here's what the working party thought, and if anything was to go forward, what were the options that they preferred.
That's assuming anything will go forward.
That's assuming anything will go forward. So it isn't normal to take it back to a workshop. We normally would bring this back to a full committee and present all the options for decision making there. However, we sense that really elected members from the workshop just wanted more information. So we were being a bit precautionary about getting local board feedback within that process. Apologies if it's confused everyone, when it was really clear from the recommendations we're only seeking approval to an information report, and I think perhaps the joint working groups confused that. So apologies, it was just anticipatory.
Yeah, so look, Councillor Simpson, it was clear at the workshop what the options that they wanted the staff to do. They then ended up getting and having a look at the options. What the better plan was, a better process was to then put it through to the workshop, working group. If they then end up deciding, one, they wanted further information, or they say, no, these options don't go, it'll come back with that decision. That is the process that we put in place. So I was clear what process they wanted at the workshop. And this is just bringing back to say, because we want to be cautionary, this is the way that we believe, going back to the 2019 decision, is how we can be cautionary by involving the local boards and regional councillors on this working group, which is C. So I'm okay with it, but if councillors aren't, there's no issue with it. But I was clear after the workshop, from what I heard from councillors around there and independent Māori statutory board of the committee, where we were going. So I was quite clear. So this is why I've now sort of just asked for any part-time that's come through. So Councillor Simpson, is there anything else before I move to two more part-time?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Newman, Pātai, and you're also on whakaaro, and then Councillor Henderson.
Good morning, Alf, and good morning, Kat and your team. A couple of questions from me, because this is sort of dancing into a minefield, this issue. But with respect to engagement and consultation with the leaseholders, the in-depth investigation on relevant domestic and international community lease rent pricing options, that can be effectively done as a desktop study by members of your team, surely, can't it? I mean, it's possible the methodology that you will apply, that part of your review can be a desktop study. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I wouldn't be going to the leaseholders in relation to an investigation of what would be a strategy for the renewal of the physical assets. You would be engaging who to do that work?
So through the chair, we will be working with our colleagues in operation to better understanding the cost of administration, renewal and maintenance. We would probably use a sample of leases. We do not intend to do the work for the whole of the 1,300 leases, but we would just go into quite details into a sample of leases across different geographical areas and type of organizations, sports, education, etc.
Yeah, actually, I think that getting information about the state of the assets to inform an asset management policy approach for renewals is actually really pertinent. That's where I think you should be going. Considering the desktop study that you have to do, as well as engaging operational staff to inform information around renewals, doesn't involve creating uncertainty with these groups who are the leaseholders at present. Why do we need to engage with those leaseholders? What is it from the leaseholders that we need to know about that requires us to go and confront them with what we're pitching as a benign inquiry in election year? What is it that we need to be talking to them about when the information that we require is information that we get from other sources?
So it's not really proposed to talk to the leaseholders. This is why we had thought it was a low reputational risk, because we thought the risk of misunderstanding this project was from this paper going onto a public agenda. So we were just going to make sure that any inquiries that come to us around maybe misunderstanding what this paper is about, since it's in the public arena, that we will be really clear about the impact of that.
Okay, look, Chair, I reserve my right to speak on this. Thank you.
That's fine. You're on the list as well. Councillor Henderson and Councillor Koo.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Newman's actually asked my question, but I'll reserve my right to speak as well, so I'll chuck my name on the list.
Cut by Councillor Koo.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you for this work and the presentation. And I do think that this is following up from a very clear direction that was given at workshop, that we need to investigate more deeply, and that the status quo isn't necessarily fit for purpose. And I know from my time on a local board, I would really welcome this work, because there's lots of perverse outcomes from the current structure. But the part I do have is, when I look at the Māori impact statement, that gives me the context in which this process and the decision sits. But when I heard the Chair of Finance and Performance asking her question, I went straight to the financial implications, because I expected that to give me a bit more of a deeper depth of what I'm considering in the context of financial implications. And the same with the climate impact statement, that there has got to be impacts around how we manage our leases, and if groups are, say, using more premises than they need because they're just paying a peppercorn rent, then that has impacts in terms of building efficiencies, and there's a whole, I mean, that's just, hypothetical stuff. So I just find this a very bizarre way of considering the issue that we're looking at, and I just think that it would be, I mean, I've been asking this question a lot about how we approach impact statements, and it just seems to be very hit and miss. So in terms of our understanding of where this is going to go to the next stage, and I'm very supportive of that, because I absolutely don't want us to kind of shut it down now. If there are tweaks to the process that colleagues are wanting, then I'm supportive of that. But I just think we've got to continue the momentum of this and looking into it. So so to sort of put this as a question, it really is around how can we ensure that those impact statements, as this progresses, are more thought of in terms of what the issue is in front of us, rather than making this decision today does not have a financial implication because it's just staff time. That just does not make sense. So if there's any further information that could be given, that would be really welcome.
So the chair, so the financial implication is the implication of the proposed recommendation, which is about bringing back to you a more detailed investigation report in August. And in that investigation report, we can detail the financial implications of different options as we have more information. But my understanding of those impact statements is very much the impacts of recommendations under consideration at the time.
Kia ora, Councillor Hills, Hātai.
Kia ora, Chair, and I think maybe the answer to Councillor Coombs' question answered mine, but I guess I just want to double check because I feel there's been some to and fro. These recommendations do not change anything. This is to enable, I'm just making sure my understanding that this is to enable a process to allow us to see the full scope of where we're at and give a clear picture of where we're short and where we're maybe overcharging, undercharging, ensure there's equity across the city, and then will enable us to make decisions on future leases and rents and things to make sure it's fair across the city, with also taking in financial implications. So I just want to make sure again that this actually doesn't change anything on the ground today by making this decision.
So the chair, that's exactly right. And when we bring back something to you with more information in August, it will be your prerogative also not to go any further. So, we're taking it step by step, and the work can be stopped at any time based on the direction from this committee.
Right, Chair. So thank you. So this is basically a lay of the land, basically giving staff permission to look at this. Otherwise, they're wasting their time if we don't want them to even consider it.
You're right, and that's what I thought. You're right. That's what I thought it explained. But obviously, it is what it is with all the part-time we've had. There's no further. I'm going to move to whakaaro now. Matua kake.
Kia ora tātou. Hey, thank you for that report. I just, I agree with the Mayor and I agree with Councillor Newman in terms of this should be really a operational exercise, and that we should be framing it in that context. And then, it's healthy to know what the costs are for any administrative role across this. So my comment is to support their thinking around that. I would also comment in the context of 14A, I think it's got number 3, there's no real incentive for leaseholders to maximise utilisation. You know, some leaseholders will probably take that as a bit of an uppercut or take offence to that. So the whole commentary around understanding the leaseholders and what they do on council property, on council buildings is probably more the point, so that we have clear information around what the social return on those investments and why they're getting subsidised really is. So that to me is the exercise, and it is an operational one. Thank you.
Kapai, Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, and I agree too, and I was not going to support the working group for that reason. The key partners in this are the local boards who know who are in the buildings, who understand the groups that are in there, what outcomes they deliver. We've had peppercorn leases for a long time. This work must be done. We must quantify the costs, and we must put that alongside the cost of the renewals. So there's work to be done with community facilities and the AMPs, but specifically local boards who understand this is their bread and butter. They are the ones renewing the leases. They are the ones that are deciding when they will subsidise a group for renting a building. An example, the Manurewa local board was paying for the Weymouth residents and ratepayers to hold their meetings, and it came out of their budget. They are the ones that will be able to inform this better, I would say, than a broader group. And it doesn't need a working group. It's operational. You will go and you will speak to local boards. And I think that the model recommendations, when they do come back, is something that the governing body, I'm still not quite clear on that decision making. I'm assuming that there's a model the governing body will agree to, and then the local board will implement, and then they will subsidise or not, as the case may be. But as part of the long-term plan, we've agreed to further enable this with local boards as well in terms of community facilities. So the model is going to be really critical to that. It could look like a baseline of cost recovery of admin with renewals and maintenance coming from rates-funded depreciation. But I think it's something that your team is going to get their heads around. And if a working group is required, perhaps that's in the future, but not at this point in time. So I support the work, Chair. I won't be supporting C. Thank you.
Kia ora, Matua Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I've got an issue with networking at the moment, so I'm coming to you by phone. A and B, I've got no problem with. I think there's, it's been well known that we've been subsidised, that the council's been subsidising community leases for years. I think the extent to which that they've been subsidised is one that hasn't really been worked through. With C, my concern with C is actually we've expanded it now to 7 people. I've done all this kind of cope-upper before, and it just drags on and on and on until we can get 7 people to sit down together. And if you haven't nailed this by April, it's all over, because you're then jamming it right up towards the July date. So I'm thinking to myself, well, really, if you're going to start managing this by trying to sort out 7 people's diaries, and the Independent Maori Statutory Board always seems to come last and has to compromise all the time, and we're running around trying to chase up with 6 other people that have got their diaries all full, as if the Independent Maori Statutory Board member doesn't have his or her time full as well. And so I'm very concerned about the increase in size, understanding the reasons that it's been asked for. The second thing with this cope-upper is, the Mayor has stated it all, and I'm glad you're not going out for consultation, because I'll tell you now, the result of consultation will be none of these will be sitting here next year, because nobody ever wants to pay more for something they're paying less for now. So, I think the Mayor kind of hit it on the head. It needs to be understood how much of these community facilities are we actually supporting through ratepayers. through the rates and through other things, because I think that's the thing that people don't realise. So that's where I'm going to leave this. Thank you, Chair.
Ka pai, Deputy Mayor Bill.
Yes, thanks, Alf, and thanks, staff. You know, the precautionary approach is very sensible here, but there's a degree of inevitability here as well, is that trying to change this lease profile, it was just a cost recovery, let alone, doing R&M. It's just not going to happen. It's politically, it's just impossible. There might be some very small tinkering at the size. So I'm agreeing with Angela pretty much that I'm happy with A and B, but I think C, we don't need to do that. And it is a local board's decision making, and whether we do something in their funding mechanisms that they can recuperate the costs is another way, maybe potentially forward. That's part of the governance study, I think. But I think just have A and B, forget C, and do it in-house, do it desktop, so we understand the costs, and then have a long, hard think about, okay, what is the political reality if we're going to change some of this stuff? Thank you, Al.
Ka pai, Councillor Newman.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's a bit of a theme going here because I'm not for C either. So if my vote can be recorded against that, but I think that there is important work to do here, particularly in that renewal space. I would like to see, an asset management planning approach whereby we actually did quantify these costs, because it would reveal that we don't fund our renewal of assets sufficiently. Probably across most of council, but actually in this space, I think there's going to be a very significant unfunded renewals and maintenance costs, and that needs to be identified, because that needs to be funded. It needs to go to finance for budgetary consideration. That's where it needs to be. But with respect to this model, Chair, I'm thinking back the debates in the last few years. We ended up having a no disadvantage approach to funding for CAB. We've had to really, in my view, compromise far too far in relation to an option for how we would achieve greater equity funding for local boards, where some local boards, if we do follow that model, will be incredibly protected, and in my view undeservedly so. But we have to compromise all the way, because we never want to take away a privilege that one community has in order to address an equity deficit for another. So I think that with respect to this piece of work, it is really critical, because I don't know where we approach renewals work with respect to funding renewals through cost recovery. Renewals of existing council assets is funded through rates, and we ought to, I think, affirm that approach. And if we do affirm that approach, then the way to address that is to properly identify the cost, and that needs to be a budgetary consideration. So my plea to the officers is, don't just take a snapshot, don't just look at a sample. If you're going to go down an inquiry into the cost of the renewing of these physical assets, it needs to be much wider than a small sample, because that's a really interesting part of this particular review. It's not the rent price structure, it's the renewal of assets which are currently not being renewed in many cases, and that creates a very significant contingent liability. Thank you, Chair.
Ka pai, Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, I probably don't need to say what I was going to say, because it seems like we're coming to a bit of an agreement so far. I wasn't planning on supporting C either. I just think that it's not necessary at this time. It just seems like we need to let the policy workers get on with creating what they do best, and then it comes back to political consideration. And that's really all I need to say, so I won't be supporting C. Thanks.
Ka pai. Any further before I close?
Mate, just one part. Sorry, Chair, didn't have time to type it in. It's Richard here.
Yeah.
My only, and not to put you in this situation, but just the numbers of people who are concerned about C, just wondered if you had any consideration to remove C yourself. Obviously, don't want to put you in a awkward moment, but just if people are feeling uncomfortable to be represented that way, potentially a way forward. But up to you to put it forward or not.
I was just about to say that, but also what I was going to do was going to put C separate. I'm now going to explain why I am going to say what I'm going to say. So if there's no further whakaaro, I will close the debate and then I will put the recommendations. 3-second rule gone. Nancy, who's that?
It's Wayne.
Okay.
Didn't want to say anything other than that. I support all the comments that Councillor Newman made. That's all from me.
Kapai, any further before I close the debate? Okay, Nancy, Korol and Kataraina, can I tell you firstly, thank you for the report. Also, thank you for being cautionary in regards to number C, as in Agenda C, which I had agreed to put in because you needed to be cautionary based on the 2019 discussions. For those that were there in 2019 around the discussions, it was all about two things. One is the local board deputation delegations, but also about a regional approach. So I want to say that do not apologise, Kataraina, for putting in C. That was not your issue. I agreed with it because that was based on the information that I knew and the corridor that we had in 2019. Also, if we go back to the workshop that we had prior to the end of last year, if we go back to that workshop, some of the councillors and committee who were there were the ones that ended up asking for more information to be done by the staff and then to bring it back with options. So look, they're now some, well, what I've heard, one is the fact that you have brought this back based on that workshop. So to you, Nancy, again, and Karol and Kataraina, thank you for the report. In regards to this particular item, we all knew that this was going to be an issue for everybody leading into the election. This is why there was no work done in regards to any consultation with lessees or anybody else. It was going to go to the working group so then they could have a look at options and then they could end up going back to the committee, the PACE committee, for a decision to be made. Now, some of the options, as Kataraina and staff had said, some of the options is that, no, we don't do any further work, we just stop where it is. And that's no issue, that's not a problem. There may have been a recommendation that we ended up coming back here and saying, look, we need to look at this further because status quo, as what we all heard at the workshop, was not working. So we needed to have a look at options. So again, and I'm re-emphasising this, Nancy, Korol and Kataraina, no fault needs to be with you, and I'm not saying that people said that there's fault, but I do not also want to have anybody apologise if people are upset with C. Moving to C, I have no problems at all in removing C. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put C separately, and then people can vote with it because I got no issue with that. None at all. If people don't want to have this, no problems. Matua Wilcox, I understand your comment around the Independent Māori Statutory Board, being told to end up having to end up agreeing with local board and councillors. They get the option. I was going to suggest that we go to the Independent Māori Statutory Board member first to get a date and then go to the other three. That was one way of at least alleviating your concerns. But in regards to this, I'm going to, as I've said, and thank you, Kalinda, or the team that's now got put it separately, and that's in regards to C. So I'm going to end up putting everything except C, and then I will put C, and there will be a division on C. But look, I will put everything else, and so Maya, Kalinda, or Sophie, I can't see the whole all the recommendations, but it'll be good just to sort of A, B, I think it might be a D. If you could then get those ones out of the way, and then we'll move C, and that will be, yeah. And then I'll move C separately. So
Kia ora, Chair.
Yeah.
Kia ora,
Okay,
Chair.
Maya,
It's Maya. We've only got 3 clauses for this item, so we've got A and B. If you'd like to put A and B, and then we can do a division on C.
Okay, then. So look, I'm going to put A and B first. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Kia ora. Last item is C. I'm going to put that in a division. So Maya, can you call division please on C?
I sure can. Kia ora, committee. You're voting on the appointment of a joint working group comprising of 3 councillors, 3 local board chairs or their delegates and 1 independent Māori statutory board member to consider domestic and international community lease rent price options as part of the information report back to committee. Councillor Filipaina.
Aye.
Councillor Casey.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cashmore.
No.
Sorry, I'll go back to Councillor Bartley.
No.
Councillor Collins. Councillor Coombe.
Aye.
Councillor Cooper.
Aye.
Councillor Dalton.
No.
Councillor Darby.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
No.
Mayor Goff.
No.
Councillor Henderson.
No.
Councillor Hills.
No. Apologies, Chair.
IMSB member Kake.
No.
Councillor Mulholland.
Against.
Councillor Newman.
No.
Councillor Sayers. Councillor Simpson.
Oh, God. Sorry. So, no.
Councillor Stewart. Councillor Walker.
No.
Councillor Watson.
Yes.
IMSB member Wilcox.
No.
Councillor Young.
No.
Maya, just noting Councillor Collins, apologies, he went off call for his bubba.
Thank you. That motion is lost 6 votes to 14. Back to you, Chair.
Kapai. So that's been dealt with, but again, just wanted to thank the staff for the report. We're going to now go back, Maya, if that's okay, to item 13. I will move that we recommit item 13 if that is what I need, and Councillor Casey, can you second that?
Yep.
Okay, and then Maya, what the part we've gone up to with item 13 is just allowing Councillor Dalton her whakaaro, and then I will put the recommendation. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Alf. I really appreciate you doing that. Thank you. I just wanted to say I support the strategy and congratulate the staff on the work that's been done over the years and all of the consultation that's happened with the local boards around this as well, because another strategy that is front-facing for them. I think it's really important to acknowledge the limitations of local government in this space. And there's 2 things. Well, there's more than 2 things, but one, the strategy needs to be worked on directly with the boards. And the biggest impact will come from the 4th investment principle. And that's the investment in communities to determine their own priorities and solutions. So the strategy itself is really sound in terms of addressing the 4 well-beings. but and it's been addressed, the reality is that we do have minimal levers to give effect to those outside of the local board's relationships with key stakeholders in government, central government, but also the communities that are working quite closely and now even more closely with our people that are unvaccinated. We're going to have those relationships, and they're going to vary from board to board as well. So to effectively deliver this strategy will require a devolution of power and decision making. And when we talk about equitable outcomes and social cohesion, there needs to be a much stronger engagement with CSI in the South and the West, as they hold the information and the experiences from our people in the South and the West. And that information is a key influencer to changing central government policy that is, at this point in time, not helping our people into jobs. And it will also help, and possibly could also help, the investment that we need to see into Tamaki Makaurau. And I think that is one of the key levers to the success of the strategy, is the investment and policy change by central government. I don't actually believe that additional regional funding is required for this strategy. I think the report has identified quite clearly it requires political leadership, operational leadership, and cooperation across the council family to enable it. And local boards always set their annual plans in line with the strategies of council, and that's how they allocate their funding. And their main driver is serving their communities, and that is the opportunity. So I think the main priority is actually the monitoring and evaluation that will be, and that's going to be really challenging given the diversity of Tamaki, and our ability to respond consistently and collectively lacks the social cohesion at the moment to ensure a consistent reporting tool across the operational arms. So it's going to need something pretty unique. And we've talked previously about how our existing reporting tools, which are going to be used, do not meet the needs of Māori. They do not meet what is required to measure success or not success for our Māori people. And to remember that we can only move as fast as our people, and our people move at different paces, and that's okay. So be careful of how we measure success. What success looks like for one person or one ward or one area is going to be quite different to what it looks like for another. And each local board will have their own measure of success depending on their community. So that is the real measure, and not a formula that's going to work across Tamaki for council. So good luck, well done, and I'm more than happy to support this work in the context of my feedback. Thank you, Alf, for that opportunity.
Ka pai. So to Dave, Liz and Kataraina, it was important that we heard from Councillor Dalton as a result of the technical difficulties she was having. So just want to say thank you for waiting. Now I'm going to put the recommendation as being moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
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 Against?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Just to the committee, look, I'm in your hands. I obviously we need to have a break, but I'm in your hands in regards to, there's only 2 substantive items, which I am hoping we would get through. And once that happens, there's only one procedural one. So I'm in your hands in regards to whether you want to break for half an hour.
Yes,
or
please.
break for 5 minutes. Okay, half an hour, or I'll put the other option, break for 5 minutes, come back and do the whole agenda, and then that's it for the day.
Short break or no break from me, thanks, Chair.
Yeah, that's what I'm, so that's one. But
short break. Even if it's a short break, I need
yeah,
a break. I can't take you to.
I think if we go back and
no break.
Short break's fine. Short break.
Yep, short break.
10 minutes, please.
Yeah, 10 minutes for those that will stay longer in the wharepaku.
7 minutes.
11 minutes. Okay, then look, 10-minute break. We'll finish off. We'll finish early. Then you can have a 6-hour lunch. So see you in 10 minutes, Maya, at 10:02, if that's okay, everybody. So no mai haere mai. I'll move the recommendation if I can get a seconder.
Happy to second, Chair Collins.
Councillor Collins. Sorry, was that Matua Kake?
If so, I'm happy to withdraw.
Okay, so Maya, can you have Matua Kake and Councillor Collins, please, with this particular item? If Matua Kake can move and Councillor Collins second, please. And then I'll just invite our staff to go through the PowerPoint. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou, Mr Chairman and members. Mace Ward, General Manager of Parks, Sport and Recreation. So it is going to be a joint presentation today. I'll do a brief introduction, members, and then Mark, Dave and Nick will just outline some of those outcomes across both of the strategies. So the purpose today is just to give some presentations about bringing to life what the action plans have laid out and what we've achieved over the period of time. So can we just move slides, please, Maya? So the priority areas are outlined in each of the strategic action plans, and it recognises really the importance of parks and open space, and also delivering sport and recreation in terms of having healthy, active communities. Both plans, as you see, have 4 priority and focus areas, and to be delivered through a number of initiatives. 18 actions in the Sport and Recreation Strategic Action Plan, and 48 actions across the Open Space Strategic Parks and Open Space Strategic Action Plan. So significant pieces of work and a significant focus on that. I would just recognise the importance, and in the previous item, you talked about the policy development of our colleagues and across the organisation in delivering on these actions from a policy perspective, but also our other colleagues and CCOs, other departments of the council, and Tupuna Maunga Authority, for example, so quite significant. Let me just go to the next slide, please, Maya. So implementing both plans, as I've said, is a collective effort and a partnership with mana whenua, the sports sector and many community organisations. As we've talked about often before, without our community and those community sporting organisations, for example, we deliver quite a small segment. So it's that partnerships with our community that's so critical in delivering these outcomes across Tamaki Makaurau. Council departments responsible range, as I've said, from the Community and Social Policy team, Community Facilities, Ngā Matarai, and our Regional Service Planning and Investment and Partnerships team as well. Community Facilities and Park Sport and Recreation manage what is a significant and complex portfolio with planning and delivery functions spread across both departments. But we collectively integrate and develop and care for key services and assets on behalf of Aucklanders, including parks and open spaces, community places, leisure centres, playgrounds, cemeteries, and sports facilities. Probably significantly in Action A2 in the Parks and Open Spaces Strategic Action Plan is the co-governance of the Tupuna Maunga and parks with mana whenua identified through treaty settlement process, but also picking up on Member Kake's comments, there are also other opportunities to engage with mana whenua, iwi and kaitiaki as well. Let's go to the next slide, please, Maya. So really, members, just a reflection on what is delivered across this significant range of community assets for our community. Over 4,000 parks across the rohi, including 28 regional parks, those 236 dedicated sports parks, and the 800 sports fields that we know are critical for sport and recreation. The visitation to those areas and the utilisation or enjoyment is significant in terms of 2 million visitors to our gyms and fitness programs, 7 million to leisure centres, and 7 million to regional parks and Auckland Botanic Gardens. Quite a focus has been to get beyond the walls of our leisure centres, and our sport and recreation activation program has had 900 activations in recent times over the last year, with over 30,000 people participating. And that's been really critical through a period of COVID when people can't always be indoors, but we do and enable those assets of being outdoors and often engage with a different part of our community who aren't always wanting to go to a gym or wanting to go into an indoor space and feel much more comfortable participating in those spaces. Those programs also include the sort of Connect with Nature programs, the Wild Child programs, of getting often young people who can connect into nature and learn those types of skills of being, should I say, a wild child, as some of us may have been when we were young and able to roam freely. A significant part of our partnership is partnering with the community through delivering these programs, but also how we deliver parks and open spaces. 170,000 hours of volunteer effort every year has gone from our community, dedicated into how we deliver our services and how we care for and treasure our parks and open spaces. In terms of sport and recreation, it rather dwarfs that statistic, but over 21 million hours goes into sport and recreation from clubs and parents. So a significant effort in that area too that we're not recognising. Of course, I've just mentioned we mentioned memorialisation and how we care for people once they pass. Our cemetery spaces provide that important role, but also provide a real heritage asset and a place for people to be reflective as well in our region. Significant effort in our ecological space and how we contribute to the restoration of ecological spaces across parks, sport and recreation, and enable us to take a leadership role through the Mayor's Million Trees program on our parks and open spaces. Having people stay and engage, over 23,000, almost 24,000 bookings where people are staying and connecting with nature, having family time on our parks, and that's certainly a very valued part of our service that's delivered. Learn to swim, so critical in a coastal environment that we have. A very difficult period over this last summer with a number of people who have lost their lives, and the understanding that we really need to continue to focus on getting those water skills for life for young people and everyone who lives in our region. So those Learn to Swim programs are really critical in terms of how we build that resilience and capability across Auckland and our young people in particular. If we can go to the next slide, please, Maya, and I'm now going to ask that Nick, Dave and Mark contribute here, perhaps starting with Dave initially, please.
Kia ora, thanks, Mace, and kia ora koutou. So my name's Dave Stewart, I'm the Head of Active Recreation. So Mace has outlined a number of statistics that sort of give a bit of the scale of the mahi that we do through these two strategic action plans. And what we thought we would do is try and bring them to life a little bit through some case studies. So within the attachment to the agenda report, we've got a case study for each of the priority areas in the Auckland Sport and Recreation Strategic Action Plan and the focus areas in the Parks and Open Space Strategic Action Plans. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the four that we have here for the Auckland Sport and Recreation Strategic Action Plan. So the first priority area there is around participation. So here we're talking about Matatawa, which is a kaupapa Māori organisation that aims to reconnect whānau with the environment and traditional customary practices. They deliver a program for kura students in Te Reo Māori 5 days a week, focused on waka, water safety, rākau and cycling. The program is supported by the Manarewa Local Board and delivered at Te Matariki Clendon Community Centre, the Manarewa Leisure Centre and Manarewa Pools. In 2021, over 10 schools were involved with more than 9,000 tamariki and rangatahi taking part. So the second priority area there is around the My Leisure portal for our pools and leisure network. So this was launched in April 2021 with over 15,000 customers already having created accounts online. Over 600 customers over that time have also signed up for their membership directly via the portal. So people can use the portal to view group fitness class timetables and book their classes, manage their membership details, and book learn to swim lessons and track their progress, all saving customers and staff time. As restrictions have eased during the last lockdown, the My Leisure portal was really integral in managing the outdoor group fitness classes that we opened up as they were outdoor and allowable under the COVID protection framework, allowing customers to be able to book and pay online and allowing staff to manage group class sizes safely in line with the mandated limits. Also coming soon in this infrastructure area, as you know, we've got the Sport and Recreation Facility Investment Fund that is currently live, and we've had, I think, 103 expressions of interest in the round so far, seeking more than $70 million worth of investment. So we're coming back to you later this year with recommendations around that. But infrastructure is a really key role that we play in the delivery of this action plan. So in terms of the third priority area there, excellence in sport and recreation, it's a really exciting time at the moment. Over the next 18 months, Auckland will host an unprecedented 3 Women's World Cups across cricket, rugby and football. And Park Sport and Recreation are supporting the delivery and planning of these major sporting events. They build pride in our sporting culture and provide future opportunities and benefits for the community. They will help sort of as a legacy outcome by enhancing local infrastructure, and participation will grow, seeing improved inclusivity for women and girls in the sport. Facilities are often designed for a male-centric sport environment back in the 1960s and 70s, and so they'll become more gender neutral and fit for purpose for the delivery of tournaments in 2022 and beyond. We're working closely with Auckland Unlimited, Sport New Zealand and regional and national bodies and sports clubs to upgrade the fields and floodlighting to meet tournament requirements and to fund the upgrade of changing facilities with a real focus on gender neutral design. And the final in these 4 priority areas is around sector development. So this financial year, you may remember that we approved and we've signed off a 3-year funding agreement with the John Walker Find Your Field of Dreams Foundation. So that committed $180,000 of funding each year over that 3-year period. So this agreement recognises the huge value that this program provides our local communities and the ongoing successful partnership that Council has had with this foundation. The agreement provides operational support funding that enables FIFOD to concentrate on delivering their sport and recreation programs to tamariki and rangatahi who need us the most. So that's the 4 priority areas within the Auckland Sport and Recreation Strategic Action Plan. So I'll pass over to Nick and Mark around the Parks and Open Space plan.
Tēnā koe, Dave. Tēnei hoki te mihi atu ki a koutou mā oku rangatira I ara i a mātou mā I roto I te manaakitanga o tō tātou whenua. Me a rātou mā hoki I hāpaingia ngā whakaaronga wawata o tō tātou hāpori I wainganui a mātou o Tāmaki Makaurau. Nei rā te mihi. My name is Nick Turoa. I'm the kaiwhakahaere Te Wakatairanga Whenua. Te Wakatairanga Whenua is a business unit inside of Park Sports and Recreation that is 2 kaupapa, the first being around supporting the operational delivery of co-governance work on behalf of a number of co-governance arrangements. These include treaty settlement legislated arrangements with the likes of Ngāti Whātua Rākei Reserves Board, Te Puari or Kaipātiki, and of course the Tupuna Maunga Authority, of which one of these examples are here today. It's probably really important to start off by saying that these are, and the other kaupapa that we look after is Māori outcomes, and it's just to provide a strategic overview over Park Sports and Rec of all of the Māori outcomes that are delivered through Park Sports and Recreation. With this example here today, the Maungawhau Boardwalk, firstly just want to start off by acknowledging that it is an independent statutory board born out of out of a treaty settlement, and Auckland Council's role in supporting the Tupuna Maunga Authority through its delivery is through agreeing alongside the Tupuna Maunga Authority on its annual operational plan. This particular project is around the boardwalk on Maunga Fo. It was completed in 2020. I guess for those that have been up there in previous years, you would have noticed that it was really rutted out, and you'd saw really large divots throughout, and that was eating into some of the archaeological fabric on the Maunga. And of course, this is an internationally recognised archaeological site, so it really did, I guess, irk mana whenua that their, one of their wahitapu, their spiritual ancestral places, wasn't being treated appropriately. And this project took quite some consideration in its design to achieve the ability for our communities to enjoy quiet reflection and to enjoy the tupuna maunga, but also to just align with some of those cultural values. It's built in a way, it has a number of sustainability measures, sustainability factors that were built into its design. For example, the main substructure is built out of metal, which has a 100-year lifespan. The whole thing can be recycled at the end of that 100-year lifespan. It's using sustainable forestry products. Unfortunately, not from New Zealand, they are from overseas, but it is sustainably sourced hardwoods. And one of the greatest things about it is that it's on screw pile technology, and so there's no concrete footing on the on this, and the whole thing can actually be taken away at any stage, and it would be left in a state that it wasn't even there. The design allows for it's a permeable surface. It allows for light, water, and air to flow through it, and this is really important for mana whenua. So even though this was delivered by an independent statutory board, I guess it's really important to understand that it does align with POSAT, and as well as, I guess, that around value around treasuring our parks and open spaces. So kia ora for allowing us to present that, and I'd like to pass it over to Mark to present on the rest of the parks and open space stuff. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou members. Thank you for your time this afternoon. My name is Mark Bowater, Head of Park Services. So Nick has profiled one of the 4 key focus areas for the Parks and Open Space Strategic Action Plan, and the 3 case studies that I'll now talk to relate to the other 3, enjoy, connect and utilise. So we'll start with Sculpture in the Gardens. This is a biennial event held at the Auckland Botanic Gardens, and it's a partnership with the Friends of the Botanic Gardens. The inaugural event was held in 2007, and the 8th exhibition opened on 11 December 2021. The primary original objective of Sculpture in the Gardens was to attract more visitors to the Botanic Gardens, and it certainly achieved this objective, with around 369,000 visitors during the last event. It is now the most highly visited sculpture event in the country. At each exhibition, the Friends purchase a piece of art, and this contributes to the 26 outstanding sculptures now on permanent display in the gardens. The next one is our Connect to Nature programs. These are delivered primarily in local parks or community parks, and they aim to connect more people with parks and nature, focus on activities for young people in particular, Maori and Asian communities. In 2021, 78 targeted Connect to Nature programs were delivered. Programs include urban bush camps, Wild About Nature, and Mātauranga Māori, Wananga, and Kai Whenua, which empower participants to connect with nature, take part in environmental activities, develop awareness of our Indigenous biodiversity, and celebrate our Māori identity in parks. During the recent COVID-19 lockdown periods, our team ran Backyard Wild Child programs on Facebook. It was all delivered virtually and received a huge following. And there were many other online events as well. The last one is around natural burials. This began in Waikumete Cemetery in 2017. The natural burial area is located within an area of regenerating native bush and offers an alternative to the traditional burial layout of a lawn cemetery. As the burial placement is not in sequential rows, plots are identified to work with the vegetation and the landscape, and GPS coordinates are recorded. Families who wish to visit the burial site of a loved one are able to use those GPS coordinates to locate it. Annual planting occurs in the burial area where families can celebrate, remember and restore the space. In 2018, Waikumete Cemetery received the Innovation Award for the Natural Burial Area at the New Zealand Cemeteries and Crematoria Collective Conference. Thank you, and that wraps up our case studies.
Mace, you got any closing comments before I open it up? There's 2 pātai already.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And no, the only closing comment I have is just really to recognise the committee's support in delivering this mahi across Auckland, and that includes how we engage with our communities. So, kia ora, Mr. Chairman.
Ka pai ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa, gentlemen. Thank you so much for the presentation. Pātai, first one is Matua Kake.
No, I'm good with this one, Iwa. Thank you. I think the explanation's been fine. Thank you.
Ka pai. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. And look, this could well be a highlight of my day, an excellent report. Thank you all. A major highlight, I might add. Look, my pātai is to Mace. Mace, in one of your slides, you say that our volunteers gave approximately 170,000 hours of work in our parks. Have you got any idea how much that has, what the cost of that? I mean, that's a huge saving. Our volunteers do so much out there. And of course, because they are volunteers and it's not paid, and I know we support them, but that's been a huge saving to council. Is there any way we can look at a value added dollar figure? Because I think it's a really great story to tell.
Kia ora, Councillor Simpson, and thanks for the question. Obviously, we haven't put a value on it. A lot of our volunteers do find that they'd rather give their time in that way, but certainly I can take that offline and come back to you with a number in terms of the offset cost of that volunteer effort. You are correct. So where we have friends of groups such as, let's say, Tāwharanui Open Sanctuary Society on regional parks, they're delivering a significant amount of value, or as you heard from Mark, the Friends of the Botanic Gardens, into those types of events like Sculpture in the Gardens, where we are partnering, right down to those local events where people are tree planting or they're doing other things, supporting sport and recreation as well. But I can come back to you with some assessment of that value. But it is a significant value, equivalent to if we were to employ staff, for example, to do that. It's equivalent to around 120 staff.
Thank you, and I'd really appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, because I think it's a real positive for Auckland. I just think that we need to make sure that we thank our volunteers and just remind everybody exactly the role that they play and how important it is, not just for what they do, but the fact that they are, saving us a considerable amount of money. So thank you. I'd appreciate that work, Mason. Come back to me. Thank you.
Yeah, ka pai, Councillor Simpson. I think also we've got our number one communications lady online here, which is Isabel, and I know she's talking to our staff to ensure the mahi that not only our volunteers but just the sector is playing will be highlighted hopefully in a release. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair.
Ka pai. I don't have any more. I'll just wait for any pātai anyway. But I do, however, and I'll just apply the 3-second rule. No, I'm going to go to just one comment in the sidebar. Mace, have you seen it? It just got put a living wage value on it. So that's just moving forward on it. Thank you. And Matua Wilcox, e kōrero taku.
Kia ora, e mihi ana kia koutou, I roto I tēnei kaupapa. I'd just like to say I've been going around the regional parks over the last period of the since January, just prior to the hearings for the kaupapa of the sorry, can you hear me?
Aye,
Okay,
kapai.
yeah. Oh, sorry. So I've been prior to our hearings for the plans for the regional parks, and I'd just like to congratulate the team for all of this kind of kaupapa, because one of the things that I've picked up from people just in regional parks and also in our open spaces has been how much they appreciated our parks and open spaces during the COVID lockdowns, all across the community. So I just wanted to say that and say thank you for implementing these kind of kaupapa. It's really important because for a lot of people that's all they had. Thank you.
Ka pai Matua, and no, I think what you've just said is echoed with everybody around there. So I will go to Councillor Walker, and then I'll get Councillor Fletcher, I think maybe the last in regards to any whakaaro. Kia ora.
Thanks, Alf. Just want to extend the question or comment that Desley was making. As much and all as there's a large number of direct volunteer hours, I would suggest that there are a significant number of indirect volunteer hours in addition to that. And if you also assess the value of plants that are grown and supplied by volunteer groups, the value that we get is absolutely phenomenal. And it would be useful to have even some approximate quantification of that. Part of the reason why I'm raising that issue is we've had an instance of some trees that were mown at Sanders Reserve in Albany and Paraimoremo, and in my view quite a bit of misinformation, not on the part of officers, but on the part of information that I've seen that gave rise to the decision making, where the officers who had prepared an excellent report weren't even given the opportunity to speak. But without wanting to go into it in any detail, what it does highlight is the need to really recognise the effective contracts that we've got with the community, with volunteers. And I'd suggest the need to have some guidelines and maybe even memorandums of understanding or protocols, so that we don't have the situation that I saw at Sanders Reserve happening at other locations, because it can be very disruptive, and in that instance I think has been quite disruptive. So I'm making that by way of a comment, Mr. Chair. If any of the officers want to make a reply, they're welcome to, but I'm not holding them to it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, ka pai, Councillor Walker, and I think it's been taken on board, your comments. So kia ora to that. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really just wanted to speak briefly to comment on the way in which I welcome the opportunity to actually have consideration of agenda items of this. When you think of the enormity of what we are responsible for, as when you listen to Mace outlining just the sheer scale of work and the scope of the work, it's extraordinary in some ways that we give it so little time by way of debate, given the great affection that the public of the Auckland region have. So I've really really appreciated the opportunity today to hear about some of the highlights, to be reminded once again of the huge amount of work that is taking place, and the absolute treasure that we have in this work. I'd also, Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, really like to give my thanks and support to the staff that we have working in the sector. They go way beyond just the professional responsibilities that they have. Many of them are involved in volunteer programs as well. I just think that we are so lucky to have such a depth of knowledge that's come through earlier councils, legacy councils, and so forth. But there's not one person working in this particular area that I don't think deserves multiple accolades. So I'm really proud as an Aucklander of what we achieve, and I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity, because we so rarely actually get to hear about what is happening in this sector. So it's been a great opportunity today to have agenda item 16, and I thank you for that.
Kapai. So, Councillor Fletcher, as I mentioned earlier about Isabel, who is on this call and our comms person, she has, I have no doubt at all, touched base with Mace around putting something in our comms. I will get her and also have a corridor with you as the portfolio holder, especially in regards to parks. So I'll, Isabel, if you're still here, and I think you are, if that could happen, that'll be great. Kia ora. There's no further, so it has been moved and seconded. I will now put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
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 Against? Carried. We'll now move to item 17, and that is just consideration of extraordinary items. Before I just put this particular one, I want to thank Kalinda and Sophie for assisting Mai today at our committee. I also want to acknowledge again the staff and say thank you to you. And also to the committee itself. And the reason I'm saying that is because I know that we ended up just having 10 minutes, but I wanted to get through these items so then we could have the afternoon without any other disruption. So thank you, committee, for allowing us to get to this point. So there's no extraordinary business, and I will close the meeting. And again, thank you to everybody. Thank you, peeps. Enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you, Chair. Thinking of you.